Welcome to Farm Charm Chic. I'm Emily. Today's mega video episode is all about using that farmhouse style to freshen up your space on a budget. I have compiled 50 different farmhouse style DIYs that each cost less than $5 to help you get that biggest bang for your buck. If you like crafting, DIYs, dupes, hacks, thrift flips, or just creating in general, I would love if you would consider subscribing. If you do like any of today's projects, remember to hit that thumbs up. But let's go make some DIYs. This piece is really simple and it doesn't take a whole lot of time to create, and it's really pretty. And I just have these pieces from Dollar Tree. So I'm showing you 5 pieces here. If you want to make a base out of like this leftover piece right here, that's totally optional. I just wanted to keep this under that $5 price point. And now that it's $1.25, not $1, we're working with 4 items, not 5. So I have 2 of the square pieces and 2 of the like picket fence or house looking pieces. These came from the Crafter Square section at Dollar Tree. They have them in this finish, and there's also like a white finish. You can also paint it to be any color that you would like. I'm going to leave mine this natural color today. Now I'm just taking my heat tool to help heat up the adhesive on the back of these price stickers that are on here, the little barcode stickers. It's just an easy way to remove these, to use like your little putty knife there or your fingernail and get under there, and then just be careful not to burn your fingers, because I've done that a time or two. And so, but you're just heating that up and it just peels right off, and it leaves very minimal adhesive on there. If it does leave a little bit of the adhesive, or you just want to kind of blend that in a little bit more, just run a little emery board over it, or sanding, some sandpaper to kind of help get that off and remove that. And it just kind of helps it so there's no residue left behind. Now I'm taking the 2, we're just going to call them a house piece, even though they're kind of like a picket fence, or I think they're supposed to be kind of like a house, but we're taking the 2 house pieces and we're going to place them against the side pieces here. You want your side pieces to be on the outside. See how I slipped this piece on the inside there? Because you don't want any rough edges to show when you're looking at this head on, if you're looking at it from a house facing you. Now I'm just using some E6000 glue. I feel like this works a little bit better than hot glue, but like some Gorilla Glue would work great. Some of the Dollar Tree super glue would work great. I just like the gel consistency of the E6000 here to make sure that I'm getting a good bond, but any type of like adhesive that you're used to using. So I put that on all 3 sides, and then I'm just going to set that off to the side there and then put some glue on my other one so I can work fairly quickly once I have this done. This is why I don't think hot glue would work the best, because I feel like it would break down over time, and I feel like sometimes if it dries a little bit, it gets a little clumpy, and I don't want that happening with this. I want this to look as clean and precise as I can. Now I'm just going to, now I realized here quickly that I'd placed the outside of this piece on the inside. So when you're doing this and putting it together, just make sure you have all of the outside pieces that have that kind of planked wood look on the outside. And you can do this with any wood pieces. I mean, say you had like a couple pieces of picket fence or some scrap wood in your garage, you could definitely cut these down and make this. You wouldn't have to use anything from Dollar Tree. If you already had some scrap wood, it would be a free project for you to make. So I'm just fitting these together very nicely here, making sure that I line all of the edges up. You do have a little bit of movement with that E6000 that you can kind of scoot any of the pieces around as you need. Now I love these clamps. These are some of my favorite clamps. I have them in a couple of different sizes, and it really helps to get that pressure and leave that on until that E6000 dries. And then this is going to be a pretty permanent fixture here. So I'm just going to line the sides up on this side now, and I'm going to place another one of these clamps. And I'm just making sure that the sides line up the best, because I want this to look, I mean, if you decide you're going to sell these or anything like that, you definitely want the most professional look. So just take your time and make sure that everything looks really nice and clean there. And so then I just squeeze this other set of clamps on here, and I leave this overnight to dry. And you can kind of see here, I need to kind of scoot that in a little bit more, push it down, make sure that's got a really even, you have a little bit, like I say with that E6000, a little bit of movement to do that. And then these clamps just squeeze on here to have that really nice firm tight. And again, I just leave this overnight, give it one last little squeeze there so it can dry completely. So the next day I come back and I'm going to remove these clamps, and there's a little trigger on them that you just kind of pull, and that releases the tension. They're very easily to operate, and then they just slide off. I just pick these up like at Home Depot or Lowe's. You can order them on Amazon. They're pretty easy to find at any type of home decor store, or not home decor store, but home improvement store. Now, just showing you how sturdy this box is, it is not going anywhere. That E6000 worked great to give this the bond that it needed. I'm going to go over this with a little bit of of a fingernail file. You guys know me, you know I love to distress things. So whether you paint this or whether you distress it, leave it as it is. Anyway, it's going to be beautiful. This has a little bit of grooves in it to kind of have it look like planks of wood. So it really does kind of help those pop when you sand around them. You can kind of see, I'll show you. I just think it looks really nice and kind of has a good rustic touch. If you were to sell these, you could do several different finishes, see which sold best for you. But I'll just repeat that same process around the entire piece. Now I'm just going to stick any plant that you've got at home or any type of greenery or anything like that. This is just like a little planter box for you. And so it's going to be really cute and really nice. However, I have this piece of rope. I had some extra rope lying around from another project. I'm just going to spray it with some water and kind of pull it taut and then let it dry flat so I can get that little kink that was in there out of it. Now, you don't have to do the rope. This is totally optional. Don't go out and buy it. It's going to take you over that $5 budget. But if you happen to have some laying around your house or in your garage or something, you just need maybe like not even quite a foot, like 10 inches maybe of it. And I just tied it in a knot on either end. I'm going to place this in here and glue it down with some hot glue, and I'm going to glue it onto either side on the inside. And then to have this hold in place until that glue dries, I just use a couple of my little Dollar Tree clamps. I love these things. Do you guys use these in your crafting? They come in a couple different sizes, and I feel like I use them all the time. But that's just going to help that rope stay in place and get a good bond there. Now, you're not going to be carrying this by the rope. However, if you were to sell this, somebody might think like, oh, I can carry this by the rope, and you don't want it coming off. The glue does give a really good bond, but I do go in with my staple gun and I just give it a staple on each side. Just make sure your staples are deep enough to go through the rope and the wood there. You could even, look how cute this looks with the plant in there. You could even drill like a hole, like on either side, like right here, you could drill a hole on either side and have the rope come through and tie on the knot on the outside or the inside. That would be really cute. But look at how beautiful this is. It was a very simple project. It did not take much time at all. And I think for the impact and the size of this piece, for being less than $5, is great. And of course, if you were to sell these, you wouldn't have to put a plant in them. You could display it with a plant and show, because a lot of us, especially crafters, have a lot of greenery laying around our house that you could just stick in here. But for different seasons, to tuck into on a shelf, I think this is just beautiful. What do you guys think of this piece? Do you like this one? I picked this darling little yellow bird up at a thrift store, and honestly, I don't remember paying $8 for it. It must have been a half off day because I really don't think I would have paid $8. Maybe I did. Anyhow, we're going to make him match my decor because I don't have anything this bright yellow. This is a really bright yellow, even brighter than what it's showing on camera here. And it's so nice to be able to pick up pieces that you love the shape of and be able to change them to match your decor. Of course, it's always convenient if you find the piece that's already your color. And I know somebody's going to comment and say, oh, why did you paint that yellow bird? He was adorable. He is, but it's going to look really weird in my house with just one yellow bird. So I'm just painting him to match the decor. And I do that with just some white chalk paint. And I'm just using the Folk Art chalk paint here. And I give a very light coat on the first coat, a very light layer, and then just kind of build on that. It takes about 3 coats to completely get the coverage on this little guy that I need. This little guy had a beautiful finish on him where there was pieces like on the wing and on the beak and on his little tail that had looked really distressed, like almost like the yellow glaze had not gone on those areas. So I was trying originally to sand those areas to have them peek through. The problem is it was very sporadic and I was starting to get that yellow paint to pop through. So it takes me just a minute to figure this out, and I keep sanding because I'm like, I just don't know what really to do, and I was going to wait and see what it looked like in the end. So stick with me because there's a little process here that I go through to get this to how I like him in the end. But I take some burnt umber, just the cheap little apple barrel acrylic paint that I pick up at Walmart or anywhere that sells like acrylic paint. You can find this color. And I just am kind of lightly going over those raised areas. So where all that detail is on his tail and his wing, I'm just going over that with kind of a dry brush, a little heavier. You can see I'll swirl it in the paint and then kind of swirl it off the brush so it's not super heavy. And then I just kind of go over all those. And I'm going to go back over them with some white paint. So I'm not super worried about it being like the way that it looks right now. Because if you look at it, you're going, that's hideous. There's a lot of paint there. So just kind of watch and see how I do this. And it's kind of a process of going back and forth. But it has such lovely detail on here that I really just wanted to have that, enhance that, and have that show. Otherwise, it's just going to look like a unfinished like ceramic bird. And I did not want that. So I'm going over lightly, just dry brushing with the white to go over those little raised areas. And you can see it's just going over that brown, and it covers it, but it still pops through because it's such a light coat, but it just tones it down and makes it have that really rustic look. And I liked the way that it was looking, so I got my brown paintbrush here, and I even go over his little face because the details in the eyes were there, and I just wanted it all to kind of pop. And you can see I just go right back over that with some white to tone it down. And that way it just makes all of those little raised areas and that detail, like that's what's so fun about these pieces, is to have that pop. Now, if you've watched me for any length of time, you'll know that I love to have a piece that like looks like you found it in the barn, or it's been sitting out for years, or it's been like you found it in great grandma's attic or something that is just so aged. That's my style, and I love it. But you can kind of see that I just decided to go over the entire bird with the little bit of brown burnt umber in my brush and go all over. And what's happening is all of the brush strokes, since it's chalk paint, you get lots of those brush strokes in the detail, and it's picking up that paint and giving it a lovely texture. Like, I thought it looked so pretty. It almost looks like concrete when I'm done with this. But I can kind of go over it now. I still will go over with my white brush, but you can see I'm just getting the lightest amount of that brown. And you can see, especially right there, how those brush strokes, that texture, it enhances those and just gives it a nice aged finished look. And so here I'll take my brush and just go all over this again with the white, just to tone it down so it's not overly dark. I just like the way that the layered pieces look on this, or not layered pieces, but the layered paint looks on this. And at this point I'm like, okay, I really like this. I was really kind of unsure at first, but I just think he turns out to be such a cute little guy, and he's just perfect. And it's a neutral color that I can stick out year round and have in my decor. I love to have birds out year round. I really do love how he turns out. He's got that really natural tone that I can put really anywhere in my home, and he's gonna fit in and look beautiful. What do you guys think of him? I love using tin cans to do DIYs with, and I know that they are very popular and they're very easy to get your hands on a tin can. I mean, we all use different types of fruits and veggies. This is a wider can here. It was like a 28-ounce can, so I thought it would be kind of fun to make a little pocket out of this. Now, I just took the label off, and I'm just using a rubber mallet, and all I'm going to do is just pound this down. Now, it looks maybe like I'm pounding quite hard. It's not really. It might take you a minute to do this to kind of bend the shape of that can, especially the larger cans, but just stick with it, and eventually you'll get that bottom completely closed off, and then you can kind of just use your hands like I'm doing here to kind of bend and mold that shape of how you want the top of the can to be. Now I'm taking my Crop-A-Dial here. I love this tool. It's linked down in my description box, but I've also recently seen it at Hobby Lobby. I'm using this to punch a hole in both of the sides of the can because I want to be able to hang this. Now, the cool thing about this Crop-A-Dial is not only does it punch the holes, but I'm going to put a couple of grommets in either side, and that's going to take away, because we just cut the tin, there's a potential that it could be sharp or anything. We don't want any edges like that on there. And so I'm just going to place that in both sides, and that's going to help it look finished, and that way it's going to look like it's got like a professional edge. You can kind of see here, and then when we have it there, it's just not going to slice anybody's hand or anything like that. It's going to make it safe. So I do that on both sides with this Crop-A-Dial, and it comes with all the grommets and everything in this little kit that I got here. I actually use this much more than I ever thought that I would, so it really is kind of a cool thing there. So now that all the grommets are in place, I just decided, and you can finish a tin can, there's several different ways to do this, but in this particular project, I'm just going to paint the entire thing white. I'm just kind of going for a really nice spring feel, something that you could leave out nice and airy, kind of a shabby chic type of look to it. Now I have these little rub-on transfers. They came from Essential Stencils, but I'll leave a link to them in my description box, but don't feel like you have to have these. Dollar Tree has rub-on transfers. Most of the craft stores I've started to see things, or like even like stickers or anything would work. You can obviously use like a napkin to decoupage on here. You could also do print on tissue paper, make your own stickers. The possibilities are endless. It's just the techniques that I'm showing you here. But I really do love this cute little bird that is on this picture, and that's kind of like a postage postage stamp vibe it's got going on, and it's really beautiful. So I just scraped, kind of rubbed that with that little stick that I have there. It came with one of the IOD transfers, but even just like a Cricut scraper or one of the ones you can get at Dollar Tree, or like a gift card or credit card or something like that. You just want to pay attention when you're doing it on a tin can that you're conscientious of like the ridges that are in the can, and make sure that you rub all of those areas, all the little hills and valleys and everything really good. Now I'm just going to take a brush after I peel the sheet back there, the transfer sheet, and you can see I'm just pouncing this in. Because of all those ridges, I want to make sure that the design is pushed down into each of those. I feel like that makes it look really nice to have all of that texture in the design. And once I do that, I'm just going to varnish it with this little piece of plastic, the little transfer carrier sheet that was with it. And then to seal this, you're just going to use some Mod Podge. I just put a little bit on here. You can do whatever finish you want, whether it be matte or satin, glossy, it doesn't matter. You just want to make sure that you seal this in. Even like a spray varnish would work fine, like a clear coat or something like that. Now you can do like a wire handle on here. I thought it would be really fun to do a little beaded handle. I thought that would kind of bring another different textural element in. So I'm just taking some dollar store beads here. These came on like a big hoop, and this is maybe like a third of the amount of beads that I got with it. It's a great deal to buy them that way. And I'm just using some twine to tie this onto each of the edges, and I'll just tie a knot. So all I did was just stick that twine through the grommet there and then tie it up at the top. You could also just tie a knot in the one end if you wanted to, but I really liked the way that it looked to have that twine kind of come up over the edge. These are so cute to display in several different ways. I'm going to just put some leftover florals that I have here from some other projects, just kind of snipping off some little extras that I have to slip in here. You can definitely put all sorts of different things in here for different seasons and different times of the year. It's so fun to change these up. And you could use this to hang with the little beaded handle there, but you could also use it sitting as a shelf sitter where you have the beads draped down kind of in front. Would look really cute as well. I think this turned out really beautiful. I really do think it kind of has that nice springy vibe, especially with the type of flowers that you decide to put in it will kind of also dictate the season and the feel that you're going for. But isn't that design so cute? If you guys are interested in these transfers, I will leave a link down in my description box. I am not sponsored or anything. I just happen to really like their stencils. And I think once you kind of break down the price of them, they're much cheaper than Dollar Tree, and they're very, very nice. But I think this turned out cute. What do you guys think? I have this bucket from Dollar Tree, and I think it's darling the way that it is, but when I got home, I realized that the handle was kind of coming off. So I just decided to take them both off because I didn't really know how to fix that really. So I kind of have an idea that I'm going to do for the handles, but first I'm going to take these little stickers that are just like these little raised bead stickers, and I'm going to run them around the top and the bottom. They're super easy to work with, and you just kind of get your spacing there. They stick very, very well, so you kind of want to make sure when you stick them down that you know where you're sticking them. So they're a little difficult to kind of pull up once they're down, but you can see how easy they are. And if you have to, once you get to the other end and you need to take some off, you can just kind of pull them and they just rip apart. So fun. And what I'm going to do is we're going to paint over these, and so it will look good, I promise. Now, I think these buckets are so cute the way that they are, but I'm here to kind of give you some inspiration to show you some different ways to decorate things. So I don't want you saying like, oh, the bucket was beautiful before, because I know it was, but this is kind of fun to make it match your decor a little bit more and make it more for you. Now, I'm just using my Crop-A-Dial tool, and I will link that in my description box down below to make those holes just a little bit bigger, because I'm going to use some rope to go through those after I get this all painted. So I just go through and I paint this. I actually did one coat of chalk paint here, and then I actually went out into my garage and spray painted it because those beads are a little difficult to get the chalk paint to stick to. Now, to give it a little detail so you can see that little raised area, I just take some elephant chalk paint, but you could use like mineral, or you could even use antiquing wax, and just lightly go over those beads, and that's just going to make them pop. They kind of blend in if you leave them all white and don't do this step here. It would be fine if you did, but this is the way you definitely notice them. And I like everything weathered and distressed. With what's left in my brush, I kind of just go over the middle portion of this cute little bucket here. I go up and down like the seam and everything, just give it kind of a little bit of an aged look, like it's had a plant in it and it's gotten a little bit dirty. And then I'm just going to tape off the end of my rope. This rope came from Dollar Tree, and I am just going to feed it through and tie it, and then I'll feed the other. You'll kind of see how I'm doing it here, and then just tie it off on both sides, just tying that very tight, and then I pull it against the pail there, the bucket, to make sure that it is tight, and then I will cut off the end. And you can see here that I've got that other side. I just decide my length, I cut it off and tie it, and I'll just do this on both sides to give it something cute, something a little bit different for the handle, especially since I had the broken handle on it. So this part would be completely optional, but I do like how it looks. It gives it a very farmhouse vibe. This plant is from IKEA. They fit perfectly in there. If you want them to sit up just a little bit, you'd put just a couple tumbling tower blocks in the base of it. But I think this turned out so cute, and it's perfect for every day. You could even embellish the front part of this if you wanted to. I kind of like the simplicity of it, leaving it like this. Right now at Dollar Tree, they have these darling signs in their nautical area, and I'm just going to take off this little seashell because I'll use that for something else. And yes, this sign is beautiful the way that it is, but you guys, these signs right here are the exact same size as Dollar Tree's calendar pages. So if you have a favorite calendar page that you want to display or looking for something easy to do to kind of jazz up your decor, this is the perfect sign to get. So just keep that in mind. So all I'm doing is just taking my paint scraper, and you saw me remove that seashell, and now I'm just going to slip it underneath that frame, and I'm just going to go around the entire frame to break it free. And you can kind of see that there's a little bit of paper. I just wanted to be very gentle with that frame because I didn't want it to break. Now I love this farmhouse page here with that darling wreath. It's very neutral, and I just absolutely love it. And so that's what I chose to put on mine. Now watch this, you guys. Look at how easy this paper tears off of this. I don't know if all the signs are going to be that way, but I was absolutely floored that that came off that easy. So now I'm just going to take some black paint because I thought that would match that calendar page well. You could leave this whatever color was on there would be totally fine and skip this step and make it even easier. I just thought that black would match a little bit better with that calendar page and with my decor. And now I'm just taking a little bit of the purple glue stick. This is from Elmer's, and I'm just going to go around the edges really well to make sure. And then I don't do super a ton in the middle, just enough to hold that calendar page down, because we are going to glue that frame on the top of it that will also help it stick. And so I just kind of center that before placing it down. You have a little bit of wiggle room to kind of move it around and get it centered, all of that fun stuff. And then I'll smooth it out, and I also grab my brayer just to make sure that it gets any bubbles or anything like that completely out, and that way it adheres to everywhere where the glue was placed. I just take the end of a paintbrush and stick that through those little holes there because I want to place that little hanging tag back on it. And then I am just going to take my hot glue, is all I use, and I'm just going to glue each section on. Now this frame came off in one piece, but when I went to glue it on, I realized it was going to be easier to kind of break them apart and glue each one on individually. So that way I could have a little bit more control over where it went and the spacing and all of that. So that's why I ended up taking and totally disassembling the frame. It's super easy to do. I mean, it's just held together by a little bit of like the paper that was left on the back of it. So, I mean, it was literally just like ripping them apart. And as you just saw, I used my brayer a couple of times just to help get that pressed down really well and evenly. And on this top piece, you just match up the little holes that are there because I do want to place that hanging little beaded hanger from it. And then you just take, what I did is I took a little bit of white chalk paint on a chip brush and kind of went over the edges. This just kind of gave it a little bit more of a farmhouse look. I always like to just stress a little bit there. And then I just replaced this little beaded hanging thing from it. And I had a couple of extra beads that were the same size, and I thought it would look better to have a few more beads. So I just placed those on there. Now it looks cute with this little thing hanging down like this, or you can hang it from the tag. Either way. I just love that these signs are in Dollar Tree right now and that they are the exact size of these calendar pages because there are some beautiful pages. I'm sure you guys have seen so many DIYs with these, but this is so simple to be able to display in this way. Anyway, I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on this one. I like to keep glass jars and vases in my stash. They're really easy to find at the thrift store, or you can pick them up at your craft store. I like to grab them when they go on sale for really cheap because I feel like you can always find uses for them. Now I just used my heat tool to get off the sticker. There was a little bit of residue, so I'm just using some water and just moving that around with my finger to make sure that gets all broken up, and then just wipe it clear with a paper towel, and you can see there's no residue left at all. Now I have this rope in my stash. This just came from Dollar Tree. I think if you had like some nautical rope to use with it as well, anything like that would work. Even twine would work and get the job done. But I'm just going to use this, and I put a little bit of hot glue on the ends, and I just twisted it there when the glue wasn't so hot, so that way I wasn't going to have a problem with any fraying on the rope. Now I'm just picking a starting point here. I'm using some hot glue to adhere that to the glass jar, and I'm just going to be going around in a circular motion with my piece of rope, just making sure that every inch or so I put a little dot of hot glue. And you just repeat this process all the way around. It's super simple. You do want to make sure that you're not using so much hot glue that you have a problem with it spilling out or seeping out of the rope or anything, because you want to keep it as clean as possible. If you had one of those small nosed glue guns, that would be a perfect thing to use on this project here. Unfortunately, I have my trusty old glue gun I've had forever, and I love it and it works. So if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? So I'm just, as you see here, going around here, just being very careful. I do put the glue on the rope, a little dot, not on the glass. I just wanted to keep it, like I said, as clean as possible. And it's just so simple to do this. This project took maybe 10 or 15 minutes to do from start to finish. If you have one long piece of rope to use, I would suggest doing that so you don't have to go back in with another piece. I just was using a scrap piece and I didn't know exactly how far that would get me. So that's what I started with. And you can see I even ended up bringing out another bundle there because I wasn't sure how far up I wanted to go on the vase. It's just a matter of personal preference when you're doing something like this, what you think looks good. And you can see here I am just putting those two ends together to try to make it as seamless as possible. Obviously, when I display this, that area is going to go in my back. I did where I started the rope at the very bottom and I ended this layer. I wanted to make sure that those seams were both on the same side. So that way, if I did put this towards a wall, you would not be able to see that at all. Honestly, it's very seamless though. And so I feel like unless you look really closely, you can't tell. But the same process here, just going around a little bit of glue, and then I will go place that rope down. You can see here, I'm putting a little bit more there. And I just come in and I just tap that rope down, and I move that rope towards the glass. So any hot glue will go towards the glass, not out between your seams. And then any excess there, I was just kind of picking off. So as you guys can see, this is easy peasy, really simple. Here's just a close-up look at exactly what that looks like. I don't do an actual a string or bead of glue. It's just little teeny dots that I will do. And then I will push that rope in towards my vase. After I get the desired amount of layers there that I want, I'm just putting a little bit of hot glue on the end there to seal that so I don't have fraying. I do taper it off at a little bit of an angle. I have measured this so where this seam stops here, it's in line with all of the other areas that I have started new rope lines. So that way, again, they're all on that same side. So when it's placed against a wall, you would not even be able to see those. Again, you have to look pretty close to be able to see it there. And just using some glue, I'm just going to hold that down until it completely dries. And there we have it. I decide to take a little bit of one of these Ammo Flames and go over to kind of get any of those little hairs or anything like that comes up from the rope. I really like the finish this gives the rope. Of course, just be careful. Do this outside. Have water close by. Just be very smart when you're using an open flame like this. This is completely optional. But look at how beautiful this is. I think it turns out so elegant, so neutral and simple. I think it is the perfect beachy item. You could even put a little seashell on the front if you wanted to completely go that nautical look, or just leave it more plain, and that way it matches all decor types. What do you guys think of this? Do you like how it turned out? I found this little stack of like blocks, not quite like a stack of books, but I got this at the thrift store and I thought it was in really good condition. But if you don't have something like that, one of these little book stacks like this would work from Dollar Tree, or even like one of the little crates that you can paint to look like a book stack. You don't have to have this exact piece, but the fundamentals of this idea are all the same. So you can definitely use this to what pieces you do have. So my original intent was I'm going to sand off all of this cute, I mean, it's a cute saying and everything. It's just not something that doesn't match my home or anything like that. And I wanted to kind of have more of, when you're a creator, you just see things and you just want to make them your own. And so that's kind of where I'm going with this. So I'm just sanding these off and they actually come off really easy. Now, when I sand for projects like this, if you guys have watched me, you know, I love to use fingernail files and emery boards. I buy mine in bulk on Amazon. I will leave a link in the description box, but guys, any emery board is going to work fine. Pick them up at Dollar Tree if you would like to. But they just get into all those nooks and crannies and everything, and they work really well. Now, this piece was like one of those magical pieces because when I sanded off the design, the paint job still looked beautiful. And so it was a really easy piece. I didn't even have to end up painting this. However, if I did, I would have just used a light white cream color or something of any kind of chalk paint. And that's how I would have just gotten it. So if you pick up like a book stack or you have something else and need to paint it, just any kind of chalk paint. I went around and sanded the edges to give it a little bit of a rough farmhouse look. And I'm just wiping with a wet paper towel off any dust or anything that might be left. Now, I did purchase these stencils from Essential Stencils, and I have used some of their stencils before in my videos, and I do really like their stuff. This is not sponsored in any way. I was just very impressed with their stencils that I used, and they came out with these they have like a spring and Easter line of rub-on transfers, and I thought it would be really fun to try these. Now, I don't feel like they're quite as expensive as like the IOD transfers, but when you look at all the transfers that you get and kind of divide it by the size of the Dollar Tree transfers, I feel like you're not really that much more. You just have to buy them all at once. So, but any kind of transfers work. Amazon, you can get some rub-on transfers for very inexpensive. Pick ones up at Dollar Tree. I just feel like Dollar Tree hasn't really gotten any new ones in that I've used or seen, at least at my Dollar Tree. And so I thought this was fun because it was something a little bit different. So I'm just going to pick out a couple of these cute little flower stamps. I thought that would be really cute on here. And my original intent was to do 3 of them across this little stack of blocks. Now I quickly realized once I cut these out, and this is just how you get these off of their little sheets here, or separated, you just cut in between them here. And I just cut them down to size. But when I go to place this on here, I'm realizing it's a little bit bigger than I thought. It was kind of one of those like, oh, I didn't really calculate very well. So I thought, well, 2 would be kind of cute on there, but you know, it's just kind of a matter of personal taste, or even if you had like a couple of these blocks or book stacks together, you could probably do one of the bigger transfers on there, would be really beautiful. So I get a couple of littler ones on here, and I just kind of pick out my favorites or the ones I want on this project. And I end up doing 3 across. Now you could leave them like that, all just kind of in a row like that. I do end up pulling that first one up to the top and moving that other one down to the bottom just to have a little bit of a staggered look for visual interest. But again, you're going to do what works best with whatever you like and what looks great to your eye. It's so fun as a creator, just kind of wanting to make things your own. And so to use these transfers, you're just going to peel off, it's like a plastic like film on top of the backing. And when you peel off that plastic film, you're going to have your transfer, your design on there. And so it's going to be a teeny bit sticky, like not a lot, but enough that it's going to hold it to your surface. When you place that down, you want to just make sure it's kind of like one and done. You stick it down. It's very hard to peel it up and move it. It's possible, but you run the risk of tearing your design. So if you can get it set down exactly where you want the first time, that's best. And then I'm just using a little plastic stick here to rub this on. A craft stick, like a popsicle stick or wooden craft stick or something, works just fine. Like an old gift card, anything like that. Just something that you can use to rub onto the surface here, and it will transfer that design. Now, when you peel it, you want to just peel it really carefully. And if any of the design is left on the carrier sheet, just place it right back down and then just kind of rub over it for that to come off. You can kind of see here, I put it back down. And if there's a little bit there, I'm going into that little crack right there really good. And then I'm just going to keep slowly peeling it back, making sure that whole design transfers. These are very forgiving, but you just want to go slow in order for it to be forgiving. And because I feel like even if when you lay it back down, it doesn't match up 100%, you're still kind of going for that vintage vibe. It still looks fine. So you can just kind of see here, That's beautiful. And then I don't show this right here, but what you do, and I think I'll show it in a minute here, is you take your plastic cover and you just rub that over the design that you laid down. That helps to kind of burnish it onto the blocks there and helps seal it. And then I do end up going over it with some Mod Podge. But I'm just going to do that exact same process with the others. I work on these two ends here, and maybe I should have done the middle one first. I don't know. The spacing ends up being fine, especially where I can have them all on there together. I just thought getting those two ends together, and I have people tell me all the time, oh yeah, you start this way, or some people say, no, you start in the middle and work your way out. It worked fine for me, so whatever way works best. When you're doing it to kind of measure, and if you want to get out your like ruler and kind of exactly measure it, definitely do that, so that way you know where everything is going. But I feel like it's farmhouse. If it's a little bit off, it's totally fine. But that's me, you know, so whatever. Anyhow, so same process here, just kind of rubbing those down and then just gently peeling them back. And it's very simple. I feel like this is a fun project if you have grandkids or kids or somebody that you want to do this with, or something, a project like this. This is something that is perfect for them because they're able to do it very simply. It turns out very beautifully. Even like a very beginner type crafting project, you have that success rate of, oh my gosh, that was really easy and it's done and it looks beautiful. One trick to do here is use a brush to tap down into the middle of like your separation, like little cracks right here, because if the design doesn't push down all the way there, that's one way to kind of tap it down into all those little nooks and crannies, and it looks great. And it's like a really nice trick to do that. Now here's where I'm taking that plastic and I'm rubbing over all of the designs on here. This is just to helping seal them, give them a nice kind of like, you're kind of polishing your design here, and it's going to be really nice and make sure it's all adhered and there's no like snags or anything poking up. I do go over the top with some Mod Podge, just any kind of Mod Podge, the kind of, if you want like a satin finish or a gloss finish, it's up to you. But this is just going to help seal it, make it a little bit waterproof. If anything, I mean, you definitely don't want to set this outside, but if you got anything on it or something like that, you'd be able to wipe it down, and that way it would help to seal the design. Now it's beautiful the way that it is, but I love to add a little bit of greenery when I'm doing little block stacks like this. And so I'm just taking from Walmart some of their boxwood, and their boxwood is so beautiful, and I feel like it has a much more realistic color than say Dollar Tree's does, and so I really do like theirs. It might be, I think for the amount of sprigs you get, it kind of works out to be a little less actually, but like I can't remember if it's $1.97 or $2.97, but you get like a really big like stack, like a big stack of it, or not stack of it, like bushel of it, I don't know what you say, but you get a lot of it, and it's quite a much more thick than Dollar Tree's. So I take 3 sprigs for each side off of my pick that I have. A pick, that's what it's called. You get a bigger pick of flowers. Anyhow, and so I put the one on the ends there, and then I'm taking 2 more and stacking on top of it, so it kind of looks like layered, so it's not just all clumped on there. You kind of have a little bit out toward the edge, and then it gets kind of thicker as it goes into the middle. And I'm just using a fair amount of hot glue in the center there. I will put a bow on here, but some flowers or something would also look very nice, something to kind of cover that middle section. You can even put a little bit more boxwood if you could get it to look really nice or anything there, but I just hold that till that glue has a nice good dry feel. Now this is just a bow that I had from some of the Christmas decor that I purchased this year. I believe it was in a package that came from Hobby Lobby, and I think there was like 6 or 7 of these bows with some like little clips on them. So I'm just trimming down the edges because it's a little long for this project, and then I'm just going to use some hot glue to stick this down in the center, and that kind of brings in a little bit of that rustic burlap into there, which is really cute with it. I love the contrast between these the burlap and that greenery on the picks. So again, it's just a little bit of hot glue that I stick down, and then I'm going to hold that bow until it completely dries. Another totally optional idea is if you want to rough up those little designs a little bit more, maybe you want to have them look a little bit more vintage, you can just lightly go over the top of them with your fingernail file. You may want to do this before you put your Mod Podge down, either that or go back and kind of reseal over it with the Mod Podge, because you're just kind of like sanding it off at this point, but it kind of has a really nice touch to it to make it look a little bit more roughed up on the actual design. Again, just a total optional, but I thought I would just show this if this is something that you did want to try. I am so pleased and happy with how this piece turns out. I think it's beautiful, and I think it's going to be a great addition for like spring decor or even just some farmhouse decor. But the fundamentals of making this piece are the same whether you do it for any season or any style to fit your home. So if you're not specifically looking for something for spring or farmhouse or something, keep this in the back of your mind to remember for different projects for different seasons, because it is so simple to make, and look at how beautiful it turns out. And I think these would sell really well at like a boutique or bazaar or something like that. What do you guys think of this? I love that Dollar Tree is now consistently carrying these round blank signs, so you don't have to buy the ones from like the seasonal section. You just have the blank wood to work with. It just makes life a lot easier when you're crafting. So I took the twine off of this and I just gave it a good coat of white paint. So you'll just do whatever base color you want. And I am a big fan of like the ticking stripes. You guys know that I do that a lot. I love that in the farmhouse decor. Kind of adds kind of almost like a French country vibe to it also. But I just thought I saw a sign similar to this on Pinterest, and I thought, you know what, I really like that. I think I can do that myself. So I just had all these pieces on hand since I'm crafting from my stash for this DIY, and so I thought it would be really fun. This washi tape from Dollar Tree works really well to do your stenciling like this with. You just want to make sure that you have it pressed down well enough to make sure that no paint seeps underneath it. Now this paint is kind of close to the pool color or Robin's of Waverly, or like the Robin's egg color in Dixie Belle. I mixed it myself just with colors that I had. And so, but any color that you want to use obviously is going to work for this, but I didn't have either of those colors on hand, so I tried my best to create them because I do love that kind of lighter bluish green tone. And you can see that I painted that middle stripe, and then I thought, well, I'm going to put another piece of tape on the edge here to create the little stripes on the side of the ticking stripe. And you can see how well when I peel that washi tape back, like the only piece that I paint that got was my error because I went outside of the lines. But you know, sometimes you need to color outside the lines in life, right? So now I am deciding to distress this. And so I'm just taking an emery board. I love using an emery board in crafting because it gets into all those little areas. So whatever you have, a sanding block would probably work a little better to do this flat area of a space here. And then once I got that distressed, I'm coming in to do some stenciling. And I just have one of the Dollar Tree stencil brushes that I trimmed off to be completely flat because I felt like I could stipple that a little bit better. This, what am I trying to say? Okay, sorry. The stencil itself came from Hobby Lobby down their stencil aisle, and I just loved it. But I mean, of course, whatever stencil you have, or if you wanted to cut something out on your Cricut, I'm just showing some different methods of ways to get things without having to always use a cutting machine or something. But like the rub-on transfers would work great. Printing on tissue paper. There's so many methods out there to do. So I'm using some chalk paste to do that because I didn't have any black paint, and I did want to do this in black. I'll kind of explain as I go here what happens. I make a kind of a boo-boo here in a minute, or a bad choice, I guess we'll say. But I kind of go with it. It does turn out pretty good in the end, but you're just using an up and down motion when you're stenciling and just making sure that you're getting the coverage. Now, this looks great. I should have just stopped here and left it, okay? And if I wanted to distress it, I should have done some white paint brushing over it. But for whatever reason, without thinking, I just decided to go over it with my emery board. And I don't know if it was because it was chalk paste or what, but the black just kept getting everywhere. And every time I would try and clean it up, like more black would just come. And I was like, this is garbage. Like I literally didn't know what to do. I just kept trying to do my best to try and clean it up with the baby wipes. And you can see like the more I wipe, the more the black comes. And I'm just using some white paint here to kind of brighten it up a little bit, because eventually I just had to stop and be like, I just have to accept the way that it is. So if you do want to distress it, I would suggest, since you've used black, and again, I don't know if it was just the chalk paste that I used, or if it would have done this with like acrylic paint or chalk paint, but just take a little bit of white paint on like a brush and just dry brush over the top of it to give it that worn look. I think that would have achieved it much better. But I mean, it doesn't look awful. I mean, it actually looks pretty decent, but just
with the process of how it was happening, I was a little disappointed that I'd made that decision. So again, learn from my mistakes, or if you like the way it looks, copy it exactly, I guess. So this is just some fencing wire or baling wire that we use on our farm. I stole it out of my husband's truck, and I get asked all the time about these little trimmers here. I got them at Lowe's. It's the Cobalt brand, and they work wonderfully to cut flowers, to cut wire. With the way that the handle is and where the tension is, it is like no pressure at all for you to cut through things super easily. But I'm sure you can find them at any hardware store, but I just get asked all the time about those. So I just use my pliers there to kind of twist that baling wire on the front there to kind of create that sign. And I do end up shortening this. I don't show that on camera, but I did shorten the handle on there. But overall, I think this looks really good. It's got that really faded, aged look, even though I didn't love the process that it went through. I think all in all, I'm going to hang this on my pantry door in my kitchen because I love to do that. I'll layer it maybe on a wreath. I just think it turned out really cute and very rustic looking. What do you guys think of this one?
I've been holding on to these ceramic orbs, balls, whatever, that I picked up at Dollar Tree a while back. And it kind of has this beautiful flower shape to it. It's just kind of a plain ceramic, so it needs some type of treatment to it, I feel like. And so I'm just using my heat tool, and I'm just going to peel off this sticker here on the bottom there. That heat tool works great to get those off, but it's really pretty, and I really thought it would be fun to kind of do like a wax detail on it to kind of make all of those little grooves and everything pop and have that detail come out. So I thought that I would paint it this lovely green color. Now, of course, any color that you paint this is going to be beautiful. And when I started this, because I really was kind of going for just a nice, fresh vibe with this, and I thought that this green was really dark, but it does end up okay. So stick with me on this one, because even though it does look kind of dark and it ends up being kind of bright and really pretty. So, but any color that you would do this would be beautiful. It does take a couple of coats. As you can see here, as I'm drying it, there's a little bit of the white peeking through, maybe that because it's so porous, because it's just kind of like an unfinished ceramic, it just kind of pulls that paint in rather than letting it spread. So it does take a couple of coats on this. So I'm just showing I had to go over it a couple of times just to get the coverage, to make sure that it didn't look unfinished in any way, and you didn't have any of the white peeking through. Now this is just a white wax. This is Folk Arts kind. I pick it up at Hobby Lobby. And I'm taking a stencil brush so I can pounce and swirl this in so it gets in all of the grooves. And this is what's going to brighten up this green really well. So I just, as you can see, go around and just swirl it. You can be kind of heavy-handed with this if you want, because it smears and spreads very lovely, very easily all around. So a little does go a long way, but you can be generous. You don't need to be like worried about being too heavy-handed, because we're going to wipe most of it off. So here I just grabbed a dry paper towel. You could probably use a baby wipe, might even wipe more of it off, or if you got your paper towel wet, I just had a dry one. And I started wiping it, and I started wiping it from like the top of it down to the bottom, and realized if you wipe it in the way of the design here, like I am right there, it wipes off like a lot easier, and it's a lot smoother to do. And you just go around and just wipe it off until you get the finish that you want. And you can see all of that beautiful detailing there starts to pop. Almost looks like mermaid scales or something when it's positioned like this, doesn't it? But it's really nice, and you just keep doing this until you get all of the amount that you want off. Now you can see how clean and crisp this is looking. It's starting to show those little details and that embellishment so beautifully. And if you get to this point and you think like I've wiped it too much, you can put a little bit more wax on. Or if the opposite, like here, I decided I wanted the green to pop a little bit more on those raised areas. So I just took the rest of the green that was left in my brush, and I'm just going over some of the areas. And that's just going to enhance that original green color we put on there. It's just going to enhance that and make that white pop even more. So that's a great detail. If you did get a little too heavy-handed, there's ways to fix it, and this is one of them. So it's a great tip to use. I can't believe that for $1.25 and some paint and a little bit of wax, I get this beautiful orb to use in my decor. You would pay upwards of $10+ for these if you were to buy them at a store already completed. I really love how you can see all of that detail from the wax up close here. I think it turned out really beautiful, and that detail is really so fun to see up close like this. This is one of those pieces that is so fun to have and is really a staple because you can use it in tiered trays, anywhere that you need a pop of color. And that's what's so fun is you can paint them different colors and have them for different seasons if you would like. So when you find these at Dollar Tree, grab a couple. I picked up this darling little pail of lavender at Hobby Lobby, and you can see it was marked down considerably on there. But if you don't have anything like this, you could use a pail from Dollar Tree like this. And I thought it would be really fun to kind of jazz this up just a little bit. And I have these darling little rub-on transfers. These came from Essential Stencils, and I'll leave their link down in the description box. But if you happen to have some from like Dollar Tree or some IOD, or I know Amazon, I'm starting to see the rub-on transfers like everywhere, like you can find some. And so whatever you have or can find, even just a little sticker would be really cute also. But I'm just going to take this transfer and put this on this cute little pail here. I just thought this would just add a little extra detail to it, kind of bring it, you know, take it up a notch rather than having it just be the plain. You could even just add a ribbon or something to this if you wanted to. But I really just loved these little vintage, almost like stamps is what these little pictures are. I thought this was just going to really make this so cute. So I'm just centering it as best as I can. Now, if you watched my last video, you saw me use one of these rub-on transfers and I completely botched the project. I feel like I saved it, but it was really one of those like sad moments that I really sat there so frustrated. So I'm going to take my time and be very careful with scratching this or rubbing this. You just take anything like a gift card or just like a little craft stick or something, and you're going to put pressure to rub and transfer this design, hence rub-on transfer this design onto your surface. Now this little pail has these little ridges in it. So you can see I'm just going to go in between each of those ridges to make sure that the design will transfer there. And I'll show you another trick to do to make sure that you definitely get into all those little ridges here in just a second. But after I get it all rubbed on, you just want to start to peel it up carefully, because if you notice that there's an area that you're like, ooh, it didn't transfer right here, you can lay that back down as I do here, and I can just kind of go and rub a little bit more in that area to kind of get that transfer to happen a little bit easier. And that way you're not going to lose any of your design. And then once you peel it all off, it looks like this. Now I'm taking just a clean paintbrush and I'm just going to dab in the middle of those ridges. That's going to help that design transfer and adhere in between those. So that way it gives you a really good bonding. Now you can take your plastic and varnish that all over if you would like. I'm just going over it with the paintbrush, but then I will also take a little bit of just Mod Podge, and you can use any type of Mod Podge finish or anything. But I'm just going to put that on here to seal this, so that way it's not going to get like very easily scratched off or anything like that. And so you can see, and I don't go over the whole pail with it, just enough to protect the design. It's up to you what you decide to do there, but you don't need a whole lot of Mod Podge. This is really just to protect that design from like any elements or like anybody scratching or anything like that. This is such a quick project and a quick way to take something that is just kind of basic and make it a little bit more exciting, add a little different element to it. I think this is beautiful. It so reminds me of springtime and Easter time. I think this would be so perfect on a tiered tray, especially to kind of bring in that floral element. And I just love this design on this little postage stamp that's on there. I just think it all blends very well together and is such a beautiful project or beautiful item to have to set into all of your spring and Easter decor. I am pulling out my calendar from 2023 from Dollar Tree, and I'm actually using the November picture, which happens to be carrots. I just feel like this time of year, carrots, I don't know, they're so applicable. I mean, you know, you can plant carrots this time of year if it's warm enough in your climate, but I just love this design, and it just is more spring to me than like a November calendar page. So I'm going to make a cute little sign, and so that way I can display that picture and have it. Now, this is a sign from Dollar Tree, and I'm just gently taking off this sand dollar in case I decide to use it in some nautical DIYs. But these signs right here are the perfect size for the Dollar Tree calendar pages. So when you see them, and they don't have them out year round, I feel like it is something more in summer months that they have these signs. And I'm just using my putty knife. It looks like I'm really struggling here, but I'm really not. I'm just trying to not break the frame because I wanted the frame to stay in one piece. However, I end up not using the frame at all, so it didn't really matter. But anyhow, I just take that frame off, and then I'm just using some glue here, and I'm going to put some craft paper down because I don't want to take the time to have to take off all of that design that's on there. I've done this before, and I feel like it takes a long time and it's a lot of effort to get all of that paper off, and sometimes you've used so much water it can warp the board. So what I'm going to do is place down some craft paper on the glue here, and then you'll just kind of see here, I just get my brayer and make sure that that is well pressed into that design, and then I'm just going to go through and cut off any of the excess edges and also sand them. This way I didn't have to measure the paper a whole ton. I could just kind of glue it, set it down, and go. This is giving it a nice crisp clean edge here. Now I'm not going to use this paper covered area as my back. I'm still going to glue my design onto this craft paper. This just gives you a nice smooth surface to work with, and also covers up the design that was there, so that way you're not having anything peek through. So it's very good to do that. And then on the back side of your sign, you still have that nice clean sign back that was there. Now it takes me just a minute to get this centered and put where I want it to, but once I do, I just use my brayer and see if I can get any bubbles or anything out. I don't tend to have a lot of bubbles that appear, but these calendar pages are a little thin. So I'm trying this trick. This is not quite exactly what everybody's told me to do with Mod Podge, but I'm using my little heat press here after that glue has set for a minute to kind of see if I can get any bubbles out. There was a few that were in there. Not terrible, but I actually did really like using this on there. I feel like maybe it kind of melted the glue and kind of had a little bit of a better bond there. So I can see how this would be beneficial with Mod Podge, and I am going to try this technique coming up very soon in one of my videos. Now I did just paint a little bit where that hole was from the original calendar page there, so it just blended right in. And now I'm just looking for where the holes were on the sign, so that way I can add a hanger on this. Now you wouldn't have to add a hanger on this. You have it covered up if you want to have it another way, or if you want to. It was very hard to come up with a way to make a frame around this because it was going to cover the fresh and the carrots. So that is ultimately why I decided not to put the frame back on here, is it was going to cover that, and I did not like the way that that looked. Now I'm taking a little bit of thicker twine. I just buy this at Walmart, and I just put a little painting tape on the edge to give it almost like a needle, so that way it can come through the holes easily, and it's just really nice to have that on there. You can see I'm just going to grab my pliers and pull that through. It comes right through. And then I'm going to just tie this off in a couple of knots on the side. I decided to have the knots on the front. I thought that added like a little nice rustic farmhouse touch to it. And so I just do like a double knot on each side here. And then once I do have my knot tied, I will just trim off the edge. And then one thing I always love to do when I get it to this point is I love to take the twine in my fingers, and I love to kind of, I don't know, like rub it a little bit. And so just like this here, so that way it kind of has like a frayed look. So it's not like just a fresh cut, like you just cut it and left it. Like it looks like it was actually there for some time and meant to be that way. And then I just do the exact same thing on the other side here. But I mean, for a Dollar Tree calendar page, this is such an easy hack, and you have such a beautiful sign to hang. I absolutely love this. I have seen signs using these pages like this at vintage market days that people are asking like $25 for, you guys, and they're selling them at that price. So definitely something to think about if you're a craft seller, but definitely something to try if you're just wanting some beautiful like pictures in your home or in your decor. These calendar pages are a great way to go. I almost didn't put this DIY in, and you'll see why in just a moment, but I thought I would show you how you can take something that maybe you really don't like or you mess up, and how you can kind of embrace it and make it look okay. So this is just a little cutting board. They sell them at Hobby Lobby year round. I picked this up from like 2023's spring line. I buy them when they're like half off or even 70% off, so you're only paying a couple of dollars for them. And they're so fun to use in tiered tray decor and different things like just to have like in a shelf in a kitchen or something. But I have these rub-on transfers. These came from Essential Stencils, and they're beautiful transfers. And I'm so, you guys, I kind of really botched this transfer here, and I'm so sad about it because it is such a beautiful transfer. And you'll see exactly what I mean here. So right now I'm just picking the side of the cutting board that I want, and there's this little like almost chip in there, like this little crack, and I loved the way that looked, so I made that the front. And on these, just work like any rub-on transfers that you've seen before. They're a little bit sticky on the back there, so you don't want to like touch your finger on there and peel it up, but you want to center it on your design where you're putting it, or your surface where you're putting it. And you can see I'm just going to center this, and then you just kind of rub it all the way down to kind of make it stick, so that way you can start to transfer it. And watch what happens here. Like the first swipe that I do of doing this, it bent the paper back and I peeled or like ripped my transfer. So I literally sat there and maybe cried a couple minutes over it. Not really, but maybe I did. But I decided I'm going to keep going and just see what it looks like. Maybe I can make it look like really distressed or something, which is what I end up doing. Because sometimes when this happens, I mean, there was no coming back from that. I just had to embrace it or throw it away. And so I thought, well, let's just see what happens. And it does end up looking pretty cute. Is it perfect? No. Do I wish this hadn't happened? Yes, but it's okay. I mean, it's fine and it looks okay. So I'm just rubbing the back of the transfer on it, the paper, to kind of help it burnish that onto the wood. And then I take my fingernail file and I'm really going to rough this up because I'm trying to make this look now like it's something that's been sitting around in grandma's kitchen for years or something. And that design has just faded or chipped over time. And so you can see that I get pretty heavy-handed with the way that I'm sanding, because that's a pretty big botch up at the top there that I did. I still look at it and it makes me really mad and sad, but I mean, it ends up cute. You'll have to let me know if you guys have ever done this with the rub-on transfers and what you did about it, or if you just kind of embraced it. But I just kept sanding it and I was like, well, it looks pretty good. I mean, these actually age pretty well. Like, you can age them and make them look distressed really good. Like it's just an old label that had been sitting on this little cutting board for decades. So it's kind of fun that, you know, you can take something that you've ruined like this and still make it look all right and intentional, right? Because we all know that was definitely not intentional. So again, after I sanded it, kind of had a little bit of a sticky feeling to it because that adhesive on the back. So I just rubbed it down with that transfer paper that it came on it again. And then I sprayed it with a little bit of water to kind of get all of the little dust particles and stuff up there and just gently wipe that off. I was very careful going over this design because that's all I needed was the water to start to peel that up. Now you can go over this with some decoupage. You can do some like food safe decoupage. You can do hard coat, satin, whatever kind that you want to on there. I just left it because I'm not going to be using it for any type of like a coaster or anything like that. It's probably just going to go on a tiered tray that I'm going to put together, or just like in my shelf on my kitchen. Just a fun, cute little thing. These are also really fun gifts to tie on to like if you're giving it Christmas time or Mother's Day or something, or a birthday present, or just a gift for a friend. These are kind of fun to tie on to something a little extra. You know how sometimes people will tie like little teeny whisks on things, or some cookie cutters. Like these little cutting boards are perfect to have for those, just to add just a little something, especially if you personalize it. Maybe you wouldn't give this one out with what I did. But you get the gist, you get the idea. Now I tied some jute twine on here, some thick on there, to kind of make it look like it's what it would hang from. And if you spray this with some water and stretch it out and let that dry, it's going to take all of that like curl or kink that's in there out of that jute twine. And look, I mean, this looks really beautiful. Again, is it perfect? No. Do I wish this hadn't have happened? Absolutely. But I think I took something that was maybe destined for the trash after that moment and made it look intentional and look pretty. And I'm sure that in somebody's rustic kitchen, I mean, my kitchen has some pretty rustic things in it, it's going to look beautiful. I would love to know what you guys think of this. Would you have just scrapped it, or would you have kept going on? For this project, you just need any type of sign blank. I love checking Hobby Lobby because I feel like I get the best deals there and like wonderful sized signs. So that's where I got this one from. I am trying to sand the letters off just by hand, and they are not budging. And I really wanted a natural wood look to this. So I take it out, and it is so hard to film one-handed while you're sanding something, but I'm just using like my big sander. That's what I had to end up using to get those letters off of there. And then I just cut this image out on my Cricut, and I'm kind of making a stencil. And I got it from Silhouette's design studio, so I will go ahead and link that down, so if you wanted to find it there, you could, and then you can size it to whatever size your background is. But I just placed it down like a stencil
So I just reverse weeded it and then laid that down on my surface here. And then I am just pouncing with a little bit of paint up and down all over the stencil. Now you can kind of see at the top my bee didn't transfer the best, and then I have one of the words that didn't. So I'll go back in and redo those after I get everything else done. So I'm just going through and lightly pouncing, letting that paint dry, and then I will peel that up. And there are a couple of areas that I have to go in and just take the rest of that stencil up, like, you know, in the middle of my O's and everything like that. So you can kind of see there how that process is. And then I'm just doing the little word raw there because it didn't transfer, or the stencil didn't work the best. And I redid my cute little bee at the top there, which I think is just absolutely darling. You can always try using water slide decal paper or using printing on tissue paper to do a sign like this. I am just going in and de-stressing it with some sand to kind of make all of the writing and the stencil look a little bit aged and blend in with that wood surface that I did, how it looks very distressed. I just think this turned out so cute. I love this sign. It's like the perfect distressing amount, and I love the wood finish on it as well. I think it turned out really cute. What do you guys think of this cute sign? I had some wooden blocks that I had picked up at a yard sale, and I just gave them kind of a whitewash, and now I am just going over them and I am painting a faux ticking stripe to kind of match all of my other French farmhouse bee decor that I'm doing. And I just freehand this on here, so it does not have to be perfect. You can tell that I am not by any means able to paint straight lines, but it ends up looking okay in the end. I was a little skeptical, but I think it ends up looking okay. After I get all of those stripes painted on all of the sides of these little blocks here, I go in with some white paint on a little chip brush here, you can kind of see, and I just kind of distress that even more so it does look a little bit more faded. I have been asked by several people to give a little bit more thorough detail on how to print on tissue paper. So I am just taking a regular piece of copy paper and a regular piece of tissue paper. One side of the tissue paper kind of has a shiny sheen to it, and the other side is more of a dull, softer side. So I like to print with that shiny, slick side down to the paper, so that softer side is what is up, what goes through your printer. So I just take a corner of the tissue paper and move in a little bit on my paper, and then I am just placing tape down to tape the corners really well. After I get my first corner taped there, I will just take a pair of scissors and I am just going to trim the tissue paper down to fit on my paper so I can tape all of the edges down. Now I have seen a couple of different methods on how to tape your paper down. This is how I've had the most success. You can bring the tissue paper around the edges of your paper if you want, just as long as that paper fits through your printer and doesn't rip or anything. And this is how I've had the most success. After I cut it down, I just tape all of the corners down, making sure that my tape covers that entire corner so nothing's going to get caught in my printer. I then take a couple of pieces of tape and I tape along the edges. I don't want any air getting underneath that tissue paper and having it bubble up when it goes into the printer when it starts printing, and this helps prevent that from happening. So I will just feed this through my printer just like a normal piece of paper now. So whatever side you put your paper in, so you want the tissue paper where the ink comes through. Does that make sense? So I'm putting it so it will print on the tissue paper on the paper. So when I first printed mine, I printed it and it came out black, like very dark. You can see here. And that wasn't really the French farmhouse look that I wanted. So I went ahead and redid my image in Canva, and I just printed these in Canva and did a gray color. You can see this one, the tissue paper did rip a little bit, but it did not rip any of the images, so it's still okay. So I'm just going to, you just cut around these. You can, I don't like to tear it because I don't want to risk tearing my image. So at this point, I just cut these off here until I get my little tissue paper, and you just take that off of the paper, throw your paper away, and you're left with these darling images printed on the tissue paper. Now I've had several people tell me that they sell water pens to do this with, or specific things to do this with. I don't have those on hand. I'm not going to go buy one because it works just fine to use a little paintbrush and a little bit of water and do the method this way. If you have one of those brushes or want to invest in one of those, go for it. I don't see the need because I do this every once in a while and this totally works. So, but I just want you to know there is that tool out there, and every time I do this, everyone tells me about the pens. I am well aware that there are the pens. this works just fine for me. So I just kind of go around my image a little bit with a little water on that brush, and then you're able to tear away that tissue paper, and it kind of gives you a little frayed edge. So when we decoupage this onto our blocks, you're not really going to see the edge of the tissue paper. So now I'm just taking some decoupage on my brush. I am using a matte decoupage, and I am just putting it all over my surface there very lightly. And I am just using, I'm not really sure what this little tool is called here. It came with my Cricut accessories, but I love it for this because then I don't get my fingers all messed up. And I just center it as best I can. And then using my finger, my dry finger, I'm just kind of pressing it around from the middle outwards to kind of have it not have as many wrinkles. And then once I get to that very outward edge, I use my brayer to kind of get that cemented down on there, if you will. And that helps smooth it all out. And then I go around the edges with a little bit of decoupage first. I let that dry, and then I will go over the entire image with a very, very, very thin coat of decoupage to help protect it and help it so it doesn't like rip or anything like that. Now do be careful when you're using your brayer on the tissue paper, because tissue paper is a little bit more sturdy than a napkin is, so it can handle a brayer a little better, but you do run the risk of tearing it, so just be very careful with that. Now the wonderful thing about this is when you first place it on there, you can kind of see the tissue paper outline, but as you do the decoupage around the edge and you do the decoupage over the top of it, literally that edge vanishes. Like, it looks like this is either printed on there. I love how this looks. I love the water slide decal paper. You could easily use that for this project, but I feel like this, you don't get that sheen like you do with the decal paper. I think this is such a wonderful trick. And look at how beautiful these little blocks turned out. I think they turned out so cute. I think they're that perfect touch of farmhouse and French country. And if you wanted to place images around all sides of them, you easily could do that as well. It would be fun to have some different themes on all the different sides of them as well.
I really loved the look of these cute bee canisters, and I actually had a little canister that I thought would be perfect to try and create something very similar, kind of come up with my own dupe here. This is just a little tin from Hobby Lobby. I got it at one of their clearance sales last year, so I'm not sure. They usually have something like this. What it says on it, I don't know, but I think I only paid like 89 cents or something for them. And it had a cute little coffee label on there, but I just used my little emery board and it filed right off. I mean, like, I thought I was gonna have to repaint this or do all sorts of things, but that just sanded off so easily. And I have these darling napkins. I got these at Home Goods this year, so they may still have them, and it had these darling vintage bee designs on here. And I thought they were so cute, and I loved like the little feel to this, kind of that French country almost feel, with the little Paris thing there. I've used these on a lot of different DIYs. I love the decoupaging process. So I'm just using some water on a little brush to go around the outline of the part of the design I want. And then I'm just going to lightly tear that out so it gives it kind of a nice rough that's kind of an oxymoron, huh? A nice rough edge though, like kind of not so crisp, so it kind of goes on with a really good look here. Now when you do decoupage, you want to make sure that you remove the back portion of the napkin, because there'll be 2-ply napkins, so you're just working with that thin front portion of the napkin. And then I'm just using some Mod Podge, and I'm using the matte. I've used matte, I've used satin, I've used gloss. It just depends on the finish. It really isn't going to matter too much though. So I'm just doing a thin coat on my canister where I want that design to be, and I'll spread that out. Now there's several different ways to Mod Podge. This is what I have had success with, and so it's still wet and kind of tacky when I put this on, and I lay my design down and I work from the center with my finger, just lightly pressing that design down, smoothing out any bubbles or any wrinkles. I've seen some people use like cling or plastic wrap to do this process. I still have yet to try that, but I can see the benefits it might have. But you just want to be very delicate going around the designs here. And I just worked from the center out. And then once that dries, you put a layer of Mod Podge over the top of the napkin to make sure that it becomes waterproof and has the same finish. Now I start with the edges is how I start, and work my way kind of going outwards, you can see from the napkin there, and I will just kind of go closer into the center and work my way out. I love how this turned out. I love the feel of it, that vintage look. I think this design is perfect. It's going to look so cute. You guys wait until you see it on the tiered tray together with everything. You're going to love this. I think it turned out beautiful. I have seen these darling honey jars that are kind of this white finish with kind of a rustic look to them. You can see here they have this embossed detail, and I really wanted to create something of my own like this. And I have this darling honey jar. This was a gift from a good friend of mine. Thank you, Rachel. And she gave it to me for my birthday last year, and it was filled with local honey, which of course was delicious, but very soon gone because we love to eat honey and love to use that as a sweetener in our home. And it had this darling embossing on it, and I thought this would be perfect to kind of dupe those other honey jars and use this to do that. My friend was so sweet when she gave this to me. She said she picked this jar out specifically because she knew I would do some fun DIY with it. So I totally have her permission to paint over this jar. Now, I just put some white chalk paint over this. This is just Folk Art white chalk paint, and I gave it 2 or 3 good coats. You can put a layer of Mod Podge down if you want, but if you're doing that many coats, it's not really necessary. Now, I'm just taking my emery board to go over that raised detail. I'm starting out very lightly. I like using the emery board because you can use like the little end pieces of it to get in those really small nooks and crannies and do the really detailed area there to make that contrast. And I really just love how this contrast ends up looking on this. Now, I've since learned that these type of honey jars are called, and I'm probably going to butcher how you say this, but a muth jar. It's spelled M-U-T-H. I had no idea. We kept bees for a couple of years and we had never used any jars like this. We always just used mason jars. So I really love the vintage feel on these jars, and it looked so beautiful with the honey in it. But I'm going to be absolutely honest with you, it was like the most impractical way to like actually use honey on a daily basis. It was actually kind of hard. It was to get it out of here because the opening was so small that you couldn't really stick a knife down in there easy to get it out. It wasn't like a squeeze jar. With my mason jars, the openings are really wide. So I was very happy to kind of redo this and have it just be a decorative piece. Now, as you can see here, I'm looking at this on the neck of that jar with the space where that cork is. There was a little bit of a space there, and I thought I would try this buffalo check ribbon. Now, I didn't actually love the look of that because it wasn't kind of the feel I was going for. I do love the classic buffalo check with the bee theme. I think is very cute and very a very cute look. But I wanted something a little more like dainty or cottage core. So I have this lace ribbon from Hobby Lobby, and it is from the wedding section, but it has an adhesive back. And so it is so easy to use. And I'm just putting that around here, and I'll just cut it off to size, and you don't have to glue it down or anything. It's very easy to remove if I decide I don't like it there. But I really think this looks so cute. And then also the jar has like this little arch detail as you see all around the different edges. I also distressed each of the edges to kind of give it all that worn look. And I just thought that made it so you could see all of those letters so much better on there, the contrast. I put a little twine and a little twine bow. It's just a matter of personal preference how you embellish this, but I'm really pleased with how this comes out. It's going to be the perfect little decor piece for a bee vignette here. I love the detail on the jar and how that came out with that little bit of distressing. Do you guys think this came out really well? Would you use this in your bee decor?
I have been sitting on this birdhouse for the longest time. It sat in my stash, and you can see I paid like $3 and change for it. It was on clearance at this little cute farm store in our not our neighborhood, but in our town. And I love it and had this beautiful lattice work on here. And I have this candlestick that I picked up at Hobby Lobby, and it kind of has like this really distressed look to it. And I thought it would be really cute to put on the bottom of the birdhouse and have that birdhouse sit elevated. But all of this lattice work, I want it to match the candlestick. So to do that, I'm just taking my emery board, and I'm going to take, it takes me about 5 to 10 minutes, maybe not even quite that long, but a little bit of time to sand all of these edges and kind of really have this beautiful lattice work on there. I guess, is this lattice work, scroll work? I'm not really sure. But anyway, whatever it is, it's beautiful, but I just wanted it to match that candlestick so it all looks cohesive together. And so you can kind of see, even on the surface, I'll kind of go on there and sand that paint away. You could even use, if you didn't want to sand, you could just get like a mineral color of paint and do the same effect with paint. I'm using a combination of hot glue and E6000. This is just going to give you that permanent hold with that E6000, and that hot glue is just going to work as that temporary bonding agent while that E6000 cures, so that way it's going to have that quick hold to it. You don't want to use just hot glue in case you were to place this outside, because then if you live in a really hot climate, it can melt the glue, and so you just make sure that you use both the E6000 and the hot glue on something like of this size here. Now, as I'm doing this and I'm centering this as best I can, I'm looking here going, okay, there's this rope on top of here. I don't know what to do with it, because obviously it's not going to hang anymore. So I just took my pliers and I pulled it out, but then realized immediately, like, oh, there's a hole in the top of the birdhouse now. So in my mind, well, I would have used wood filler if I would have had that. So that's probably what I would have suggested. But I took a little wooden bead and I put some twine in it, and I tied a knot at either end of it. So that way the twine fit down into the hole. So I'm just using some glue on that to get that set down in there. And then it's kind of got the little knot at the top to kind of finish off the look. I don't know, maybe it's the bird's chimney. I don't know. In my mind it worked. So, but I really do think this turned out so cute. And I've been sitting on this birdhouse. It sat in my stash for almost 3 years. And I just didn't love the shape of it or how. I just wanted to do something with it, and I really think this was the perfect thing to do with it. So hopefully you can use this technique with any other birdhouse shapes or things that you find. This is so fun because you really could leave this out all year long. It's not just a springtime item. What do you guys think of this one?
This DIY turns out so cute. Dollar Tree has these little nesting boxes in their crafting corner, and I'm using 2 of those. And then I'm just using a wooden dowel, or you can pick up a plunger at Dollar Tree and just use the handle on the plunger. It's made out of wood. You can use that for your wooden dowels, and it's sometimes a lot cheaper than getting them like at the craft store or hardware store. Now I have just cut my dowel down to the size that I want my little tiered tray to be, and which I think this is about 7 inches that I did. And I'm just using some hot glue and wood glue. Now I wanted to glue my dowel more towards the back of the box because I want more items to be able to fit in the front when I decorate with it, because this will be in a space where you won't really see the back of it. So keep in mind, if you want to decorate it all the way around, you might want to center your dowel a little bit more. Now just using some hot glue and wood glue, I just do the same process to get that top nesting box glued on. Here's just a bonus little hack for you. If you ever find little napkin rings, keep in mind of what you might be able to do with them. This particular napkin ring came from Hobby Lobby. The little pot came from Dollar Tree. I'm just using it to stuff in my little tiered tray. It looks almost like a little topiary there, even if you see the hole in the middle. But those little napkin rings, if you ever find those at any stores that you're traveling to, keep in mind of different things you can do with them on tiered trays because they're a lot of fun. Dollar Tree has recently had a lot of these wooden beads. You get them in a pack of 125, and it comes in all sorts of different sizes. So I'm just going to make a little beaded garland because I love hanging beaded garland from different things. It adds a lot of texture, and I just think they're really cute. So I'm just doing a little pattern with a couple of small, then I do the next size up, and then the biggest size, and I just repeat that pattern throughout the whole length of this beaded garland. If you're not lucky enough to find these beads at your Dollar Tree yet, keep watching for them, but I always have a link in my description box for ones that I like to buy on Amazon, so just keep that in mind if you can't find those. I am just using a galvanized tag that I also got at Dollar Tree, and I will just loop over my twine and feed that little beaded garland through there so that way it can tie easily onto. You can kind of tie that on however you want. That's just how I chose to do it. And then all I'm going to do here is just take the end of my twine, feed it up through a couple of the beads, and cut it off so that way you don't have that little piece hanging out. You could always make a tassel for the other end of this, or instead of the tag, I decided just to tie mine off at the other end because it will be resting inside of the tiered tray and you won't see it. So I just tie a knot with that, and then I like to use a little bit of hot glue just to secure that knot. And I mean just ever such a small little daub of hot glue on there just to kind of make sure that knot is not going to come untied or anything in the future. Now I'm using some of these little rub-on transfers from Dollar Tree. These are some of their new farmhouse line that they have, which are super cute. I'm just taking the word welcome and I just cut it down from that sheet because I can use all of those others and other projects that I have. And I like to just use a little wooden craft stick. These particular rub-on transfers go on very smooth and very easily. If you saw me use the foiled ones, I have not had luck with those, but these are very simple. You can see I just peel that back and it just comes right off and transfers that word welcome on there. And it's just something really cute to place in your tiered tray.
I love to collect different types of coasters to use for DIY projects. I found these darling little farmhouse coasters at Hobby Lobby. I'm just gluing a couple of the tumbling tower blocks onto the bottom, and it makes a cute little stand for my tiered tray. This little welcome sign turns out super cute there, and here is everything put together. I love how this turns out. It is so cute. It is very farmhouse, and it is a perfect way to use those wooden beads and those little wooden nesting boxes from Dollar Tree. These little mini charcuterie or cutting boards from Dollar Tree are darling. They're in their crafting section. I'm also using a crate and then a dowel, but you could also use a plunger handle if you want to grab everything from Dollar Tree. Now, these are the exact perfect size to fit on the sides of one of these crates, and I thought this would make a darling little box. So I'm just using some wood glue on the sides of my crate here, and I'm just going to glue both of those charcuterie boards onto the side of my little crate there so we can make our little box. I like to take my little box I set up on the table to make sure it has a flat bottom and kind of use my fingers to kind of zhuzh those little charcuterie boards around to make sure all of the lines end up even and everything. And then I just put some wood glue on my dowel and I just carefully slide that in between those. And then I just use a wipe to wipe any excess wood glue off. And then I just kind of press it to make sure everything is good. So I take some little half beads now and I'm just using a little bit of super glue and the wood glue, and I'm gluing those on the outside part of where my dowel is. It's going to look like it's covering a little nail head or something. I thought it would be a really cute contrast, completely optional if you decide not to do this part. I haven't yet seen any half beads at Dollar Tree. If you guys have seen anything like that, I would love for you to let me know down in the comments. I do get mine on Amazon. I'll put a link to those down below, but I'm excited and hopeful that Dollar Tree will hopefully come out with something like that fairly soon. I did clamp this together, but I don't think that you would have to do that. I just left it to dry for about 30 minutes, but I think without the clamp, you would be fine. But now I'm going to go ahead and paint this. And at first I decided just to paint the entire thing white and kind of start from there and kind of look at it and see what I wanted to do with it, if I wanted to add contrasting colors or do a pattern or anything like that. So just give this a spray paint, or if you just want to use chalk paint, however you want to get this painted, you'll just do your choice. When I did get it all painted white, it was very stark and it needed something. So I thought I would go around all of the edges and give kind of that black farmhouse look to it. I thought this was really cute. It took a little bit of patience just to make sure I didn't get black paint spilled over onto the white. Of course, you would have to go back and touch up if you did that. And then just very carefully, I painted those little half beads as well as the handle on it also. In the end, I really love how this turns out with the two-tone, and I'm really glad that I took the time to do this because it really does kind of make this piece. Now, the sides are a little bit plain, and so you can embellish them however you want, or you can leave them. I'm just showing you what I did with mine, so this step is completely optional. I do use a couple, or just one of the Chalk Couture little stencils here. So when you use Chalk Couture, you just kind of put it on a little fuzzing mat there. It just kind of makes that stencil not as sticky, so it's not going to tear your paint or anything up. And then you just use chalk paste that they sell, and you just kind of put that over with a squeegee. It's very much like screen printing. When you pull back that, the design is revealed and it looks really cute. Check my description box for more information on Chalk Couture. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you, but just know that you're going to use whatever means you have available to you to embellish yours. So it does not have to be like mine. This is just meant to be inspiration. Now, I sanded the edges and then I took a little bit of black paint on a baby wipe, and I just am running my finger over all of the edges on this. And for some reason, this is what really made the piece to me. I'm not really sure if it just gave it like a defining something or made it look like enamel or what it was, but I really, as I started this, I wasn't sure I was going to like it, and I fell in love as I was doing this. I thought it really, really made the piece. So inside and out, I just go over all of the edges, and then I even decided to go over the crate, which I wasn't really sure about, but I'm so glad that I did because I do like the definition that it gives and like how it turns out. Now, if this is not your style or you're not loving how this looks, obviously skip this step, but it's totally my style, and I think it really just screams farmhouse, and I love it. Remember to subscribe if you're liking the projects that you're seeing today. These are some of my most favorite farmhouse projects. The next one that I do is my absolute Dollar Tree favorite of all time. This is very close though. I love how this turns out. So I'm going to show you from a different couple of angles here. Depending on your decor or where you want to set this in your house, you can set it sideways. It looks super cute at an angle or straight on. Either way with a little plant. You could even stick whatever you wanted in there besides a plant. I love how this turns out, and I think literally this is one of my favorites. I think it is absolutely beautiful. I love the look of this little frosted glass lantern from Kirkland's and thought I could easily recreate something similar with this glass little jar that I found at Dollar Tree. Now this does have this little twine around the top of it, and so I'm going to leave that rather than try to find anything, since it's all kind of like a one-stop shop thing with this, if that makes sense. So I'm just using my little heat tool to remove that sticker from the bottom, and then I'm just going to wipe it off and get it all cleaned up. I will also take this little twine off now because I'm going to frost the glass on this little lantern. I will be replacing that once this process is done. So there is a little bit of glue on the sides of the lip of the jar there, so I just use my heat tool to get that completely cleaned off, so that way the glass is completely clean. To frost this, I'm just using this Rust-Oleum frosted glass spray. I have never used this before, so this was the first time, and I absolutely love the process. I just took this out into my little spray paint studio in my garage. It's just a giant box that I have so it doesn't get all over everything. And I just give this about 3 really light coats. I just go in just a typical spray paint motion, just little small bursts, stay about 12 inches away. Let it thoroughly dry in between each layer. This is so satiny. The finish is so beautiful. It is so smooth, and I love how this turns out. This is definitely a hit, and I will be using this frosted glass from Rust-Oleum much more often. This is not sponsored or anything by them. I just ended up really liking this product. So I'm just going to replace this little twine back on here, and I am going to have that little handle, get that put into place as well. So I just use a little bit of glue. That's how it was originally affixed to the jar. So after I kind of get all of my measurements down here, I don't really measure anything. You guys know that. I just kind of eyeball it, and then I'm just going to hot glue where I want the pieces to be, and then I will be able to have that little handle to hang my lantern from. After I have glued into place where my little handle is, I'm just going to wrap around the rest of that twine, and I will just kind of tuck the pieces under and glue that. You can kind of watch how I do that here if you decide to recreate this. Now, if you want to go for the same vibe and you don't want to spray paint it, you could easily just go look for this lantern at Dollar Tree. It would be super cute. Of course, I found that on Kirkland's, and then I saw this at Dollar Tree and thought, oh my gosh, this is the perfect opportunity to try and frost glass, since I've never actually done that, and I just love how it turns out. But you can kind of see I'm just going to tuck that back under. Now I could have easily gone and thought of something else to do to make more of a wood type of handle on this, but I thought it was just easier to do it this way, and I got the same feel and the same look from this. So now I'm just going to take a couple of these little tea lights. These also came from Dollar Tree. You just pull the little tab out and they light up, and I end up putting 2 of them in there to add a little bit more light. Here's a quick look at our inspiration piece that was from Kirkland's, and then here is the piece that I recreated. I really think this turned out great. You're going to get that same feel and that same vibe from this lantern. I love how that frosted spray paint turned out, and this really was just a couple of dollars, which is a fraction of the price from the original Kirkland's version. What do you guys think of this? Do you like how it turned out? Would you try that frosted glass after seeing this? I loved how it turned out. I have a couple of these cutting board signs left over from Dollar Tree's Easter collection, so I am just going to remove the little tacks on here. Now this project ended up taking on a totally different look and feel than what I originally had anticipated. So if you wanted to save yourself some time, you could just tape off the background here and just paint this front portion of the sign. My thought was I was going to try to peel off the paper and then be able to have a blank surface, and then I thought, well, I'll pull it up, do that, and then glue it back on. But as you can see here, when I take this up, like it just ripped the paper and everything, and so I kind of had to go to plan B. So I'm just taking some of my school glue, and I'll use a combination of the school glue and the hot glue just to make sure that all of the edges are down really well. And I just put some craft paper over the front of this, and this is going to become the back of my little cutting board sign here. So you can see here I've got those different types of glue on there, and I'll just lay this down on the paper, and then I will just cut all of the excess paper off. Well, first I rub it down there, and then I cut all of the excess paper off. And then using my emery board, I just go around all of the edges, and then to get that little hole in the center, I just use an X-Acto knife to cut that out. Now I have this little block of wood left over. It was a tic-tac-toe set that I used in like my Valentine 5 under 5, and so I'm just using this to replace that little square sign to go on the front. So I just paint this completely just in some black. I think this is actually chalkboard paint that I'm using, and then on my actual cutting board, I just give it a couple coats of white paint. I like the contrast of the white and the black. Now I'm going to use this little stencil here, but unfortunately I don't have footage of me doing the actual stencil, but I'm just showing you here that I'm going to go around the edges, and I'm going to make this have that enameled look. So just using my sponge tool, I go around all of the edges, and then if you happen to kind of go up over the edge to kind of make it look like it's chipped, I really like that look. So that's kind of a matter of personal preference. So that's up to you. You can kind of see I intentionally do that here. Again, that's personal preference, but I really like the aged look that it gives the pieces. Using a detail brush, I just do the inside of that little circle, cut out on the handle. And I was just showing you that what the stencil looked like after I finished pouncing up and down my paint on there. So I just take some hot glue and I glue this little square onto the front of my cutting board. Now I got this big spool of buffalo check ribbon on Amazon, and it's lasted me forever. I'll leave a link to it in my description box, but I just tie a cute little piece on there and cut some little dovetails. I just love the way this turns out. I think it is so cute. It's perfect for a farmhouse kitchen, and I just really love that design that Dollar Tree came out with for that stencil. What do you guys think of this one? This is such a fun, easy project here. I have this, I got it at Hobby Lobby. You can see it was like $2.99 that I got, and I'm just removing the sticker off of the front here. I removed it off the back as well, and this is a great sign for what it is, but we're going to change it up. I love looking through the clearance section at Hobby Lobby or even Walmart to find signs that are on sale that maybe weren't so popular or left behind, because as a crafter, I love to change things up and repurpose them and use them for my own. And so I'm just using a fingernail file. I love using a fingernail file in my crafting to sand. I can manipulate it really well. I just really love using those. So I sand off all of the words. Now I'm showing you there, this is from Dollar Tree right here, and you could definitely use this. I have something else in mind for it, or else I probably would have used that. So if you see those at Dollar Tree, pick them up, and that way you can continue on with the project very easily. So now I'm just taking some white chalk paint, and I'm just going to cover up that area that I sanded. We're going to put something over the top of this, so you're not really going to see it, but I just wanted to make sure it was kind of uniform. Now, this is from the Dollar Tree calendars from this year, and it's from the February page, and this is the farmer's market, and you can see here this one I couldn't use the front because the words were a little too long for my thing. You can see the front says farmer's market, the actual page says garden on there. Look at these cute. I'm so excited to use this calendar in so many different projects. So I kind of used my thumbnail. You can kind of see the indentation. I laid that on my sign and kind of did that around the edges, so I had a template of where to cut. Now the front page, if you can use on your surface, is a little bit thicker, and so just to let you guys know when you do your crafting, but it had that words on the bottom of it that said like 2023 calendar or something. I don't want that on my DIY. So that's why I'm using the actual page here, but I just think this is so beautiful. Now I'm just using some Elmer school glue. You guys know that this is like my best friend with crafting. And it's particularly this purple Elmer school glue. I never have any problem with it peeling up, especially if you, like on a paper project like this, if you seal it at the end with some spray clear coat or Mod Podge or something like that. But I really find that I have a lot less wrinkling than I do with Mod Podge. Mod Podge and me sometimes get along, sometimes we don't. And I really feel like I always get along with this school glue here. So I glued the surface there, put it all over, and then I just do the edges of the paper as well, because I want that double bond, and I want to make sure that you get all of the edges, because that way when you place this on, it's not going to peel up. So I'm just checking the back to make sure I have it set correctly, because it's got a little stand on it. I didn't want to do it upside down because I'm notorious for doing stuff like that and having to redo it. So I'm just carefully lining up the edges here, and then I'm working from the center out to help push this down and alleviate or eliminate any wrinkles that you might have. And you can kind of see I'm rubbing some if I start to get any wrinkles, and just very
lightly push this out, and depending on how thick your paper is you just don't want it to tear or anything like that. Now I do have this Mod Podge roller here. I'll link that down in my description box. I love this thing, and it really helps just kind of get a really good bond between that paper and the surface that you're working with. And then I did just pull my little Cricut scraper out. You can find these at Dollar Tree now. They're really, it's not the Cricut brand, it's a Dollar Tree brand, but I mean, it works just the same. And I just kind of help flatten that out. Now I'm taking this little stencil brush and I just kind of dipped it in some white paint, and I'm just kind of going to make this look a little more aged than it looked. Completely optional, completely a matter of personal preference. I just feel like sometimes it takes a sheen off of the paper, so it doesn't look super glossy, so it looks kind of more, I don't know, less like a calendar page and more like a piece of art, I guess. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, but I just love how this turns out, and I think it is so cute. It was so simple, so inexpensive, and Dollar Tree has some really great pictures. So hopefully you can find some of these calendars or use this idea from maybe an older calendar that you have from last year. It's such a fun project and so perfect for springtime. This is such a fun DIY, and it can be made with all Dollar Tree products. So I'm using this welcome sign, one of these wood round signs, and then this tile piece. I love these tile pieces from Dollar Tree. Now this is actually inspired by a piece that I saw Brenda from Rustic and Lace make in the 5 Under 5 challenge. I'll leave a link to her video so you can see how cute her project is that she made, or I'll leave a photo of it here so you can see. But it totally inspired me that I wanted to make something similar out of I had all of these pieces that I wanted to do. So I'm just cutting this tin piece. It's not really tin, it's just like a plastic. I cut it down to fit the circular shape of that sign. When you're gluing it on here, be careful because that is plastic. It will radiate that heat and become hot. So I'm just using my brayer to make sure that that gets adhered to the wood piece for my sign. I love these tile pieces. The blue color is a new color that Dollar Tree has had, and so I'm really excited to kind of work with this one. Now I was showing you there that I had a little piece of where the edge of the tile was that hit the top of my sign, and so that's where I place the top of the sign because I'll cover it up with a bow. Now I'm giving this a very aged look with some antiquing wax and a baby wipe, and I'm just kind of pushing it all over. I wanted this to look extremely aged in farmhouse. So really this step would be completely optional. So now I'm just removing the hanging twine on this welcome sign. Just be careful when you're doing this because I felt it kind of like wobble a little bit, almost like it would break in half. So just be really careful removing that. You could even cut it off, would be easier. And I started putting some antiquing wax on with a baby wipe because I wanted it to have that dark brown color, but it was kind of not giving the coverage that I wanted. So I just went into a method of using a brush to adhere it with, or to apply it with. And then I did take a chip brush with some white chalk paint on it to kind of make it pop that three-dimensional look. Honestly, I don't feel that added too much to it, so you could probably skip that step as well. But I'm just using some hot glue, and then I am just lining it up to where those letters all fit onto my sign, and I'm using that line that's provided on the tile to kind of make sure that I get it straight. Now this twine came from the Nautical line at Dollar Tree this year, and I have loved it. This is rope, not twine though. They did have twine, which is really cute. That's what Brenda ended up using on her sign. But I'm just taking this rope and I'm just going to glue all around the edge to kind of give this a more finished look. I just thought it kind of added a little something to it, something extra. It was just there, and I thought it was really cute. So I'm just using a little bit of glue on the edges, and then I do work in little segments, as you can see here, and I'll place that glue down, and then just gently make sure you don't burn your fingers with that glue. This would be a perfect project to wear your little silicone finger caps for, and I think I kind of use them here and there throughout this. When I get around all the way around the sign, I just cut that excess off and then just glue it down there, and you can see I'm using my little silicone finger cap there. And now I need some greenery, so I just took one of these little sprigs from Dollar Tree and cut it up so I had a couple of pieces to go on either side of my sign there. And then what I decided is I needed a bow, and I have this burlap ribbon, and this would be completely optional, and I know Dollar Tree sells burlap ribbon. You could even just use jute twine. But I decided to make a little bow here just by making a loop out of the burlap there, and then just some tails. You can kind of watch what I'm doing, and I just fold that little bow over, and then I fold the tails to kind of tie all together here because I wanted those tails to kind of hang downwards rather than out of the sides of the loops, I think that makes sense. And you can see I just tie it off with a little piece of twine because we'll cover that up in a minute.
And on these little sprigs of greenery, I tie them with twine too, because I thought that would be the easiest to make sure that they don't come falling off of there, and I just have to glue one piece on rather than 4 pieces. So in my mind that made sense. And then I just put a little bit of glue there and tie that bow. Now you can see I did dovetail those. And when I glue my ribbon down, I kind of pull those little tails down so I do have more of a downward motion. And I just glued a little hanging piece onto the back. But I think this turned out absolutely darling. How cute would this be on a front door or hanging on a porch somewhere? I think it is so cute. What do you guys think of this? This was a really fun project, and I love how it turns out. This is just a votive holder from Dollar Tree, and then these are some napkin rings that you can get at Hobby Lobby. These were from last year, springtime 2023, but honestly, they have them almost year-round, I think, in their napkin section there. And just I'm taking some old styrofoam and then a stick from my yard, and I'm going to make a cute little topiary here. This is going to be so cute for like a tiered tray, even if you did like a fairy garden or something indoors. I mean, there's so many different ways that you could use this. But I'm just removing the tags from those napkin rings because we don't need those. And then I went ahead and cut this stick down to be a little bit smaller. If you don't have some sticks in your yard or anything like that, use the end of one of those sponge tool brushes when you're done with it. Stain it up and it works perfectly, so you don't have to go hunting for some sticks, or if it's a time of year or maybe you don't have a yard that you have anything like that in. There's definitely ways around that, even just a dowel or like a plunger handle, something like that. So I went ahead and you saw that I pressed that votive holder down on that styrofoam to kind of make a template there. And I just used my putty knife there to cut this off, and then I just get it to size. Now I move this out. I probably should have stuck the glue in there first before I did all this, but it worked out. So you do want that styrofoam glued down there. That is key, because you don't want this falling out of this is your like planter pot that the topiary is growing out of. So I just kind of punched a little hole with my stick here and just centered it the best I could. If you like to measure, definitely do that. I just kind of eyeballed it. It's styrofoam. You can kind of bend it in which way you need. But after I kind of poke that down in, I'm just using some hot glue, pretty liberal amount. And then I'm just going to place this down in. Now this project does take a lot of like, okay, now I'm going to sit and hold this until it dries. And so I put some around the outside of the stick here. This is going to give it a little bit more support. And then just make sure that that dries thoroughly before you start working with the stick. Now I take another piece of this styrofoam and I just put it in the center of this napkin ring. There's a nice little like literal ring in the center of this that you can kind of push that styrofoam into. And then I just went with my hot glue gun and glued around the edges so that styrofoam was secure in there. So that's what's going to give you, because the napkin ring is a lot wider than my stick that I'm putting this on. So you just need something there to kind of give you a little more stability when you put this on. And this is one of the parts that you just want to make sure that that dries completely before you move on to the next step, which right here, I'm just going to push that styrofoam over that stick, just very gently. And what's going to happen when you push this down is it's going to push up, like you'll see here that I'll have that little piece of styrofoam there that I took off from where the hole was made there. And then I just gently slide this down, and then I'm just going to, there's the little piece of styrofoam right there. And then I take my hot glue and do use a liberal amount of hot glue, and I glue around the bottom of this, and then I think I go back in and glue around the top. I just don't want this going anywhere, and you just want to scoot this down your stick to not quite the very bottom, because you want to be able to see a little of the trunk of that topiary. And then I just sat and held it like this for maybe like 3 minutes or something, just to let that glue dry. And that way you've got a firm hold, and that little part of your topiary is not going to go anywhere. Now for the top, it kind of took me a little bit of imagination to think of how I wanted to do this. This is just one of those moss-covered styrofoam stones that you get at the craft store. I got a bag of these at Dollar Tree, and I just kind of punched, like you can see I'm just using my pencil to dig out a little bit of a crevice there so I can put that onto my stick. And I thought that would be the best on here, because I really just needed it to sit on the top so I could place that other napkin ring. So I'm just putting a little bit of glue there, and I think I burnt myself right there. That's why my hand moved away so fast. So be careful when using styrofoam and glue, because the hot glue melts the styrofoam. So I'm just holding that there until it dries, and then I'll come back in with some hot glue, and I just put like a little ring around the top here, and that's just to glue our top layer of the topiary on. So I'm just going to get that, and you can see I'm just separating all of those leaves so it's very open and it fits right over the top of that. It worked out beautifully to do that. I honestly think you could probably try and do that for both layers. Just cut a hole in the middle of it. Might work even better than the floral foam that I used. But I didn't think of that until I was doing the top and was like, how am I going to do this? And it worked out perfect. Now this is just a little piece that I took off so I could have one to glue on the top to kind of cover the fact that it has like a hole in the middle, so that way it kind of closes the gap there. And then in order to finish this off, and I apologize that the camera angle, you can't see exactly what I'm doing, but I'm putting glue all the way around that styrofoam that's in the votive. And I have some moss, just some floral moss or some reindeer moss. I think I had just a random bag from Hobby Lobby from when I did my fairy gardens last summer. I just took a little bit of that, and that's what's going to give you that finished look. You just press that down, and that's what's going to finish this off. I mean, you could even do like a little bit of dirt or stones or anything you want in there to give it a finished look, but you just don't want that styrofoam in there. When I finish a project I've used hot glue on, I always like to blast it with my heat tool to melt all of the little webby strings from your hot glue. Keep in mind that these leaves are plastic though, so you can melt those if you leave it there too long. So you're just doing kind of a quick blast to kind of hit each of those little strings from the hot glue. But look at how cute this is. I think this turned out so fun, and it's darling. Whether you do doll houses, whether you have tiered trays, this is going to look beautiful on a tiered tray, or have a cute little shelf you want to stick this on. Maybe you want to glue a couple little like Easter eggs in it and have it be for Easter. I mean, there's so many possibilities. It was just fun to be able to take a stick and some napkin rings and a votive and make this cute little topiary. What do you guys think of this one?
I love looking through the seasonal sections at the thrift stores and finding all the fun finds. This little tin spoke to me and I thought it was so cute. However, I wanted to kind of leave. I like the season's greeting on the other side, and I may do something with it for Christmas, but I kind of liked the back side. I actually liked that seam coming through, and I have this little stencil from Dollar Tree that I thought would be so cute on here. So I am just wiping this up. Now this was not actual rust. I think it was painted to look rusty like this. So it wiped up really well, and I just taped down this stencil so I didn't have to hold it with my fingers. That way I could sit here and do everything I needed to get this stencil transferred on here, but not have the stencil slipping from side to side or anything. So I just put a couple little pieces of painter's tape on there. Now I'm just using a stencil brush from Dollar Tree. I'm just pouncing up and down in a motion. I do a little bit of swirling. Somebody mentioned to me that works pretty well. So you just want to make sure that you don't have a ton of paint on your brush, because that's when you start to have that seepage that comes with going underneath the stencil and creating all that mess that you really don't want there. So you can kind of just see I'm going like around in a little bit of a circle or a pouncing motion, either way, just making sure that all of those areas get covered. Now when I'm doing this, I do let it completely dry and I do a second coat because I wanted that to be a little bit thicker on here. I think it transfers really nice though. You can see when I take this off, I think it looks really good. I'm just trying to make sure that there's no places that I want to go back, because once you take that off, it's really hard to match everything up. But if you bend it down and there's a spot you maybe didn't get as well, you can kind of place it back over and touch it up. There was a little spot on the edge you could see that I needed to wipe with just like a wet paper towel or a baby wipe to get off, that I kind of had gone over on the side of the stencil. That cleaned up really, really easy. Now I'm just taking my emery board. I love using fingernail files for distressing and sanding because I love how easily you can handle them and they get into the little small areas. Now I do want to just let you know that obviously if you want to leave the stencil just fine how it was in the beginning, it looked beautiful that way. I love pieces when I'm making them to look like they have a history. They've got a good story to tell. There's something that's been around for a little while. So that is part of why I love distressing pieces. I know it's a matter of personal preference. I feel like I probably am a broken record saying that over and over, but every time I distress anything, I will have somebody comment on, oh, you ruined it. That's fine if you think that. I mean, that's up to you what you do with your distressing on there and whatnot. So now I'm just taking a little bit of green paint here. This is like a eucalyptus color, I believe is what it is. And I'm just smearing a teeny bit. I wanted it to look like it had a patina, like it's been aged, has that history, has a long story, that it's just been left out somewhere. And I just go wherever I feel, just so lightly. And then on the edges when I do it here, like I do it on the little wires that go up over to here, you can see on the edge there, just to make sure, or just to make it look like it's been sitting out for years and years. And I'll even rub some on the sides here. And when I do that, you can see I dab it down on the paper towel, and I'm just using my finger here. And when I dab it on the sides, I will just kind of rub it in. Almost, I mean, you barely can see this, but it's just enough to make it look like it's like actually aged like this. So I think it turns out really, really good. Completely optional, but I just really love how that ends up looking with that green touch on there. Now, of course, we just need some flowers. I'm just digging into my stash for these. I have just so many different florals sitting around. So whatever you would want to put in here, you could definitely change it out for the seasons. Remember that on the back side of this, I've got that Christmas one. I can flip it over for Christmas time and have a cute Christmas one. And I don't know, maybe I'll redo that in one of my videos closer to Christmas, that I will update that side of it, because I feel like it did maybe need a little something extra. But look at how beautiful this turns out. I think this is amazing. I love the colors of it. I love the drooping flowers with that design on there. I just think it looks so vintage and farmhouse, something that you would just definitely find in the French countryside. Do you guys like this piece? I was at my mother-in-law's the other day, and she had a pile of stuff bound for the thrift store, and this bucket was in there. And so I'm going to call this a thrift flip because it was on its way to the thrift store and I rescued it. So a thrift rescue. Anyhow, it's this darling metal bucket, and the sign on it was really cute. I'm just checking to see if that handle comes off easily at all, which it did not. And you can see the design is very faded. The colors were probably once really bright. And as I was looking at it, I realized, wait a second, this is just paper that's on here. So I did my best to tear as much paper off as I could. I kind of used my putty knife to go around. There was like a little ridge around the base and the top of the bucket. You can kind of see those there. And I just kind of went with my putty knife to kind of perforate the paper there so I could tear it off as easily as I could, which honestly was not very easy. It was kind of hard to get off. So I just kind of had this idea, I'm going to get as much off as I can or perforate it as much. And then all I did is I went and I ended up soaking this in a sink full of water, like my kitchen sink, for probably about an hour. And as this is after that, and so I'm just going to show you that it starts to come off pretty easily as I rub it with my finger. So I just take the putty knife again, and I'm just going to peel up as much as I can. And it does a pretty decent job this time of getting, being able to scrape it off, but there was still a little bit, you'll even see some areas like, you can tell that the water didn't even touch it because the paper was so adhered and the water couldn't touch it. And so I had to end up soaking it again. Some of it just peeled off so easy, that top layer did, but you can kind of see in the center there, that's where that little dry spot was. So I took my sander, sanded it a little bit to kind of help break up any more of the paper that was on there. And then I took it back to my kitchen sink and let it soak maybe for 10 or 15 minutes. All I did there, which I'm sorry I don't have footage from in my kitchen, was I just took a sponge, and on the scrubby side of the sponge, just kind of went around all of these areas that you can see here. I actually was thinking this looks kind of cute, like the way it was there, but I just kind of scrubbed all of that off with that side of the sponge, and it came right off. And there was a few little areas when I got it back down into my craft studio, so I just used a baby wipe to wipe those off. Now, this is my first time ever using Dixie Belle paint. I found a cute little antique store in my neck of the woods that had a booth that had a bunch of different Dixie Belle paints, and I have seen a lot of different crafters use it, and I had never tried it. So I found this duck egg color, which I absolutely love, and so I thought this would be the perfect project to try this on. I'm kind of going for a vibe of like a French flower tin here, and so you'll kind of, hopefully I achieve that, or you think that I do. I love how it turns out. So I'm just very careful to go around the hardware on where the handle is, because I do like that color, kind of the rusty metal color there showing through. So I'm just very careful as I go around the edge of that, and I'm just using my heat tool between layers, because you can see how fast it dries when you're using your heat tool, so you can move right on. And honestly, it didn't like crack or anything like that. This paint is very well, I definitely can see why a lot of crafters gravitate to this paint, and I can also see why it is a little bit more expensive than your typical chalk paint. I was very pleased with it, and I'm excited to try some different colors and maybe even some furniture projects with this. If you guys would like to see some furniture flips or furniture makeovers, let me know down in the comments, because I love doing furniture pieces and I haven't done a lot of them on my channel because I normally do a little bit smaller craft items. But if you guys would be interested in that, definitely let me know down in the comments, because I would love to start showing you guys some of those. Now, it took a couple of coats of paint to get the color that I wanted on there, the coverage I wanted. And I apologize that I realized I had not filmed me doing this whole stencil process, but I'm just using this little stencil foam thing from Dollar Tree, and I'm just using some black chalk paint and pouncing up and down. I kind of swirl it a little bit to get into those letters. This stencil just came from Dollar Tree. You could make your own stencil, use whatever, but I thought it would be so cute to put fleurs on there. I hope I said that correctly. I do not speak French, but that is French for flowers. I do know that, but I just thought that would be so cute, especially since I was going for the French vibe with it. And I end up putting some darling hydrangeas in it, and I just think it looks so cute. But I kind of take a little brush here. First, you guys, do you remember that sign I made a couple of weeks ago with the black paint on there, and I made the mistake of sanding it and it made the whole project turn black? I almost did the same thing with this one and was like, I caught myself and went, oh no. When you're doing black, don't sand over it to distress it, because it will turn everything black. You're going to distress it with the same color of your base paint, and you'll see me do that in a minute. But I just take a little detail brush and I kind of close in from that stencil there. I didn't really know how it was going to look. I don't know if it would make a difference, but I did it anyway, so that way you can kind of see that F and that E there. I just kind of made it look so it wasn't so apparent that it was a stencil. Anyhow, then I just take a do a dry brush technique, and I just take a stencil brush or a chip brush. Apparently I'm going to dry that off first there. Here we go. And I put a little bit of that duck egg on it and then dab it off on like a paper towel or a baby wipe, and then lightly go over, because I wanted this to look faded and aged. And so I didn't want that black to be, you can kind of see here after I go a couple of times, it starts to have that more faded look. I probably could have started with like a dark gray, like an elephant color chalk paint or something like that. Might have even helped the process a little bit faster, but I kind of kept going until I got the desired effect. Now I took some apple barrel burnt umber paint, which gives a great rust color if you're kind of wanting to do a quick rust look. Now I've done lots of different rust techniques. There's the cinnamon technique, there's the technique where you use baking soda, different times that I've used like different colors of paints to get more of a authentic rust color look. This one I was just kind of going for, let's just make this quick and easy, and that burnt umber totally achieved what I wanted it to. So I'm just kind of dabbing it in natural places where the bucket would have aged as it was sitting out in the weather. You know, I like to make up backstories for my pieces as I'm making them, that this is just a forgotten bucket here that maybe has been repurposed for a flower bucket there, the French countryside. All of those thoughts go through my head as I'm making my projects. So I'm just taking along the edges on the bottom and then around the hardware from that handle. And I love the wood handle that was on here, so I feel like it really just kind of fits in. And I didn't have to do anything to the inside of this bucket. It actually looked really good the way that it was. Now, less is more when it comes to the rusting, so you can see here how everything looks together. Those white hydrangeas, I feel like, set this off. You could even drill a couple holes in the bottom and plant a real hydrangea in there if you wanted to do that. This way I can use this inside or out, but I think this will look darling on my porch this summer.
This bucket came from Dollar Tree, and it has this really cool embossed, like pressed tin look to it. And I'm just removing the sticker from the base there, and I thought this would be really fun to kind of match my home decor. I wanted to kind of have it look very rustic, like it had been sitting out for a long time. Hopefully that's what I achieve here, but I'm just taking my white chalk paint. I feel like chalk paint is going to be your best option on this rather than acrylic paint, simply because of that shiny color, or the shiny texture finish that the pot already has on it. You're going to want to use that chalk paint, or at least sand it if you're using acrylic paint. So it takes me a couple of coats to get the coverage that I want. Now this is the fun part of projects like this, is you can paint them to match your home decor. So I'm going neutral because I feel like that appeals to a wider audience. However, Different colors would be so fun to do if you have different things that you're wanting to try to match or things like that. I feel like the colors that they came in were really pretty. There was like a green color and a blue color that I saw. However, I felt that they just didn't quite match my decor, and so it's so fun to see items like this and be able to pick them up, bring them home, and match them to your decor. Now, after I get all of the layers of the paint dry, it took me about 3 coats with my chalk paint. I'm just taking some antiquing wax. And you guys, any type of antiquing wax will work just fine. You just want to make sure that it's a water-based antiquing wax. There's several different brands at several different craft stores. Any of them are going to work just fine for you. But I'm just giving this a good coat on here. You can do this as light or as heavy as you want. I really felt like with that pressed tin that it is the finish on this, that this antiquing wax is going to go down into all of the little grooves and everything. So after I get all of this covered completely, you can see I have the entire thing covered with this antiquing wax. I also, as you can see here, I forgot to mention that I did paint about 2 inches down on the top of the pot there, and then I also did go in and finish that with some antiquing wax, just so if you were to see inside of the plant that I put in here, you don't see that blue color. You could paint the entire inside if you wanted, but it's not necessary. You can see I'm just taking a baby wipe. I feel like that is the best. A wet paper towel would work just fine. I just don't have, anyway. Long story short, I just keep baby wipes next to my crafting table because it is easy and I buy them in bulk and I use them all the time as I craft. But I'm just going to wipe away not all of the antiquing wax, but a lot of it, leaving behind all of the little nooks and crannies are going to have that nice little antiquing wax, and it's going to give it a nice little look like it's aged there. I do the same thing on the inside of the pot. Now, what I'll do here, because if this is what's fun about antiquing wax when you're doing this process, is if it's a little too dark for you, you're just going to take a little bit of your original color on your brush here and just go over the top lightly. This is just going to hit all of those raised areas and give them that nice bright color of paint, like that bright white on there. And I'll go over the entire bucket here, or pail, and it really, really does help brighten those raised areas, and it keeps that antiquing wax in those pressed areas to have that really aged look to it. Now, I know that some people will comment on why I left the bottom. I did go back and paint the bottom. As you can see here, I also went in with some antiquing wax just to make sure that all of it was covered. Again, if you want to do the inside, you can, but if you're going to have a potted plant inside of it like this, you don't necessarily need that. I think this looks absolutely beautiful. It looks aged. It looks rustic. It does not look like it came from Dollar Tree. It looks like something you would get in a high-end store. I think this turned out beautiful. And this is a staple that you can use all year long. Dress it up for different seasons. Change your greenery that's in there for the different seasons. I think this is absolutely beautiful. What do you guys think of this one? Every once in a while, you need a DIY or a craft or a flip that is super quick and easy, but turns out absolutely darling. And this is exactly that. I picked this tag up at Hobby Lobby's clearance. It was like less than $2. But you guys, Dollar Tree has tags, and so does Dollar General. You can get tags anywhere to make cute little signs like this, but I loved that it had the ticking stripe already on it, and I wanted to try and save that. And I also wanted to save this twine because it was a very good quality of twine, and I love how they had it tied. And so it was just a matter of untying it, and then I was able to pull that off. Now on the back side of this, there was quite a few stickers on there, so I just used my heat gun to zap those and get those off. And then I'm just sanding off the word kitchen. Now this is black paint that this is painted on with, and so it's going to maybe not sand the best, but that is the best way I could think of to get this off of here. And I was just trying to avoid that ticking stripe because I really just wanted to leave it on there. Like I said, I wanted to do as like the most minimal on this, but make it look very different than it did in the beginning. Kind of have the same vibe, but I just didn't need it to say kitchen. So I'm just very carefully taking my brush. This is just some white chalk paint that I have on here. And I'm just going to very carefully go up to that ticking stripe and then paint down towards the tie on the sign there on the little tag. That way I can keep that ticking stripe and I can cover it up with that paint. And I do go over all of the sides as well and just recoat this with that paint. And it was close enough to the same color that I didn't have to worry about the lines on the ticking stripe. After it dried, I did just rough it up with my emery board here. I went around the edges because I wanted it to have that nice farmhouse worn vibe to it, that look. And you can see I'm just going along all of the edges here as well, just to kind of sand down that paint. There's something so satisfying to me about distressing items like this and having it look. I know it's definitely a matter of personal preference, so you're just going to do what works for you when you're doing items like this. But for some reason, when I start distressing those edges and you can kind of see some character come out in the pieces, I just feel like they come to life. Now this is a rub-on transfer from Dollar Tree, and it was a little long for the tag, and I'd had this in mind thinking this is what I wanted to use, but when I pulled it out, you can see clearly it was a little bit too long. So I thought, well, maybe if I cut it up and kind of, it had a curve to it, so I wanted the curve to look good on there. And this does look cute. If I had gone this direction, I think that would have been fine. But when I was looking at it, it just didn't feel right to me. And so I thought, okay, I'll save that for another project. I have a bunch of different Dollar Tree rub-on transfers, so I pulled them all out and I found this one that said welcome home. And when I placed it on there and it had that little line between the welcome and the home, it was just perfect with that ticking stripe. I thought that I had found exactly what it needed to be. So I just placed that on there. I line it up to get it as straight as I can. You can always use a ruler if you like to get things exactly straight. I feel like I do a pretty good job just kind of eyeballing it, but I'm just using just a little piece of wood here, like a crafting stick or something like that, to rub this on. It comes on, or it rubs on extremely easy, and you just go back and forth until that design is completely, and you can see as you're rubbing it, it transferring onto your surface, so you'll know when to peel it back. After I peeled that back, I took my little piece of wood here and I just kind of made a couple little scratches into it to kind of give it a little bit of a different aged look. Again, I don't know that I would do that again if I was to make this over, but it just, in the moment, it felt like something I wanted to do, so I just went with it. And now I'm just taking my brush that I used to paint the tag. The paint in it was fairly dry, and I'm just going over that rub-on transfer. That's going to make it look a little bit aged. It's not going to be so shiny. It's going to look like it was printed directly onto this tag here. And I also go over the ticking stripe as well to give it a little bit of a worn look. And then I'm just going to re-put on this twine here. You guys, this is so simple. I mean, I just fed it back through and tied it exactly the way that it came. That's all it took for this simple little flip. I think it turned out darling. You guys are going to have to let me know down in the comments what you think of this one, because I really love this thicker tag. I think it turned out beautiful. But I think the thin tags that you get like at Dollar Tree or Dollar General, you could make something super cute as well. Embellish it however you want, and it's going to be perfect to have as a little accent piece in my decor. They have these darling little plaques or little sign blanks at Dollar Tree, and then this is from Hobby Lobby in the wedding section. However, Dollar Tree sells little frames, so feel free to use whatever little vintage frame that you would like to, or vintage looking frame. Now I'm just removing the sticker from the back of this sign and I'm just sanding it down, and while I'm doing that, I figure I will sand the front of it. Mostly because when you pick up things from Dollar Tree, there can be scratches on them, or they can look pretty ununiform with how distressed they are. So I wanted to just kind of get out any blemishes. I wanted any distressing to be intentional and be what I put there. So I'm just going to go over all of this, the ridges, everything, and just kind of brighten this up and give it a really good uniform look. On this little frame here, I'm just going to remove the back completely because I'm not going to need it. I'm going to be gluing it onto this other sign blank that we have, and I'll just remove the pieces inside of it there because I don't need those. It's just like a little plastic film on the inside of it, not glass or anything. And then I'm just going to lightly brush over this with some white chalk paint here to kind of brighten it up so it has a good contrast to the back piece that I'm using, that wood piece, and I thought the white would be a really good contrast depending on what color your background is. You could easily do like a vintage metal look to this, would be really cute. But I'm just going over all of the sides. I have just a little bit of paint on my brush here and just going over all of those edges and details. It really picks that up, and I think it really gives it a nice look.
Now I'll just give you a little peek at my creative process here. A lot of times when I'm wanting to use some scrapbook paper or something, I will try a few things, kind of set it up, see how it looks, see what I like. That galvanized metal paper I love, but it did not really pop well with the frame. And I do like the look of this leather paper, and I felt like the darker one was the best option. So that's what I end up going with. And then I just have some rub-on transfers from Dollar Tree. This is one they've had for a little while, and I've just kind of cut some of the little pieces out of this to put on here. And I just kind of haphazardly just make a collage of some of these vintage looking things. Now you could easily put an actual photo in here, a vintage photo of a family member. Would be absolutely beautiful. A drawing, anything. I mean, the possibilities are endless here. This is just something that I did to kind of go for this vintage farmhouse look. And I'm just using some hot glue around the back of the sign here. And I will just place this paper on here. You can see I place it down and then place the frame so I can center it how I want it centered there and see what I'm doing. Now I have this little key from Dollar Tree here, and at first I thought I was maybe going to put it on there, and then I thought no, it actually looks cuter off to the side. So this is where I'm going to end up gluing it, is right there, and I thought that looked really cute. Just another little element there, kind of adds that vintage tone. So I just use a little bit of hot glue and I just put that on the back of the key, and then I just place that back down kind of how I want it. Make sure it gets a good firm hold there, and I just thought that was a really cute contrast to bring that wood tones to the front of the piece where it matches the tones on the back as well. Now I'm just using a tumbling tower block to glue onto the back of my little frame here. If you want to put a little bit of cardboard or poster board or something on the back, cardstock even, to give that a little bit more heftiness rather than just the paper there. My cardstock paper was pretty, or my scrapbook paper was pretty decent, so I felt that it held okay, but just know that you're feel welcome to put a little cardboard there if you want to kind of beef that up a little bit. And then I'm just spinning this around to kind of get it as straight as I can while that glue is still hot, so I can manipulate the position of it there. Now, the frame itself looks absolutely darling on that back, but I thought it would be really fun to add a little bit of greenery. This is just the boxwood that comes from Walmart. I pulled off, I think I end up using 6 pieces in total. I have 4 here, but then quickly decided I needed a little bit more. And I'm just putting a little bit of glue on that. And if you guys have watched my channel, you know I love to make 3D signs like this. And this one's a little different because I don't go around the entire edge of the frame. I'm just doing it on the diagonal. But I love popping out that frame or your centerpiece and giving a little bit of space, and then tucking some greenery in behind it. I think it really adds such a darling element. It gives it some texture. It's something unique and different that you don't see all of the time, but I really do think it looks really nice. So you can see here I'm just kind of struggling for a minute there to get this little piece in here. But I just glue all of those in behind and then hold them, and I do the same thing on the bottom to match it so they match on the diagonal. If you have a problem with any little hot glue like webbies or wispies or anything, I just use my heat gun to blast those. Be very careful with your boxwood that you don't melt it, but this gets rid of any of those little stringy hot glue things that we all absolutely hate as crafters. This is a great way to kind of get them just to kind of melt away into thin air. But look at how beautiful this little sign looks. I just think this is adorable. And I feel like if you really did have like a vintage photo in here of somebody in your family or something, how beautiful would that be? How fun would it be to have a vintage picture in here of like your great grandma, and give it to your mom or your grandma or something as a cherished keepsake. I think this turns out beautiful regardless of the picture that you put in the center there. I think that this is such a lovely way to display a cute little frame, and I think it has that really rustic and farmhouse touch. What do you guys think of this one? Are you a fan of this one? This project is a remake or a take on a table that I have made before. It is a tiered tray that is a potting, inspired by a potting table. It is one of my most popular DIYs, and I found these little pictures at Dollar Tree, and I thought they would be perfect because I've been looking for something to kind of simplify the process to make this table. Now, you could see the one was kind of falling apart there. I had to glue the sides together. These were the only 2 that I found in the Dollar Tree I was in that day. If you find these, grab them because they are perfect for this project. Now I did remove the tin there, the little sign that said home. I believe the other one here says friends, it looks like. And you can hang on to those, use those for other projects if you want, trash them, whatever you want to do. But the glue did leave a little bit of residue behind, so I'm just sanding these, and this is just going to distress them, and it really brightens them up, and I love the finish that it gives.
Painting them would always be an option as well, but you can see how bright these look. I love kind of the almost natural wood color that this gives. It's going to be perfect for our little potting table that we're going to make here. Now I'm trying to keep this as much of Dollar Tree products as I can. I'm using some of the tumbling tower blocks. I want these to be the feet of my table, but I want them to be thicker than just one tumbling tower block. So I'm going to take some wood glue and hot glue, and I'm going to make them thicker so that way I can have a thicker base on there. You want to make sure to get these as even as possible so your table doesn't wobble at all. And I had started out using the clamps and realized I really didn't need to do that. I could just glue them with the wood glue and the hot glue and press them together really tightly with my fingers, and that would give me the bond that I needed. I would just have to hold it for a few seconds. I get asked a lot about using hot glue and wood glue together, and they're great to use together. It does not compromise either of the glue, the way that it adheres. The hot glue actually works as a temporary clamp while that wood glue dries, so it's totally fine to use those two together. Now I want to have these have a very rustic finish. I want the two layers of my table to have that natural wood color, and I want my legs to contrast with a white color, and I will distress them with some antiquing wax as well. Again, you could paint this or this in any colors that you wanted. Now where these are picture frames, you can see that I'm just removing that little sawtooth hanger on the back there. I just used some pliers rather than unscrewing it, and it worked great to get that off. And then you can see I'm just going in just very lightly dry brushing. So dry brushing is just getting your brush, putting a little bit of your paint or your wax on it. In this case, I'm using antiquing wax, and I wipe most of it off. So it's just very, very light. As you brush it up and down, it's just going to give that little aged look. Where this is going for a potting shed type of vibe here for this table, obviously I want to look like it has been used. It's rustic, and so that's why I'm going heavy with my distressing on this. That's again just totally optional, just giving you some ideas of what you might like to do for your decor, but I feel like that very rustic look there really does add that farmhouse touch to it. Now I'm just using some hot glue to glue my Jenga blocks here, the tumbling tower blocks, as my feet to the table. Don't worry, I will come back in and remove that little barcode sticker off of there. At one point I realized that, I don't know, for some reason when you get in the zone and crafting, you don't even realize things like that until, minutes later you're going, oh, I can't believe I didn't do that. So now I'm just showing you that I cut some square dowels down, and you guys, I found some easels at Dollar Tree that would work perfect to use the legs off of that if you want to keep this all Dollar Tree. I cut mine to about 5.5 inches, rounded up to 6 inches. That would be fine. I was just trying to work with the length of the wood that I had. You could even go 5 inches. It just depends on how far apart you want your two levels, but I was just showing you that I did the 5.5 inches. Now I'm painting these to match those tumbling tower blocks. So I'll give each of these a coat of white paint. It takes about 2 coats, and then I will go back in with the antiquing wax here, as you can see, and I'm just distressing. I pay close attention to the edges of the dowels there because that's where you see that heavy antiquing wax come off of there, off of the brush onto the leg, and it really just makes it look dirty, which is what we're going for, right? It's a potting table, so we're going to go with it. And it just is that farmhouse look. And I really do love that chippy farmhouse style. These heat guns are absolutely fantastic to use with your putty knife to get those stickers off. You can see how easily those just pop right off of there. You just heat up that adhesive underneath those stickers. I just put my little putty knife there that I got from Dollar Tree, and it just comes right up. I did get this heat gun on Amazon. I'll link it below if you're interested in investing in one. I honestly didn't know how often I would use it because I always just used my hair dryer when I did crafting, but you guys, I use this in almost every single DIY. So if you're looking for something new to add to your crafting game, I would highly recommend one of those heat guns. So now I'm doing the same process with these square dowels as I did with our feet for the table, and I'm just using some hot glue. I just put a bunch of hot glue in the corners there, and then I placed those legs in, and that way I would get the bond that I needed to. Now to have this glue to the top of our bottom layer, which you'll see what I mean here, I am using a little bit of wood glue with the hot glue to do this. The other table that I made, I did with hot glue, it has held up just great. So, I mean, this isn't going to get super heavy use. So I feel like the legs using just hot glue would be fine, but gluing it to that surface, this top layer to the second layer, I wanted a little bit more of a bond with that wood glue. So that's why I used a little bit of wood glue there. And you guys, look at how beautiful this table is. This is such a fun table. It's perfect. It's such a great and different take on a tiered tray. I get so many compliments on this table that I have. Like I said, this is a little bit of a smaller version of one that I made previous on my channel, but I get so many comments on this and everybody just seems to love it because it's different than what you see everywhere. And I really think that it turned out beautiful and you can use it all year long with all different seasons.
I love picking up these tag-shaped signs at Dollar Tree. They're so fun to give a makeover to. So I'm just going to try and peel this front of this sign off here, which I feel like the majority of the time, this is exactly what happens. You think you're going to get it, and then it just rips, and there's no way to get the rest of it off. So I'm just cutting some craft paper down to size and just putting some hot glue around the edge, and then I will just lay that craft paper down on the top, and the front of the sign will now become the back of our sign. And what I do here is I'll just cut this paper down to size after I get it adhered, and then I just take my emery board and go around the edges to give it a nice, crisp, clear look. It gives it that clean edge so it looks like it was made to be that way. I'm just using a skewer to mark where the holes are on the back of my paper. And then I have this paper I got at Hobby Lobby. It looks like galvanized metal, and I thought it would be so cute to have this tag kind of have a galvanized feel. So the same process I did with the back, I just cut this down kind of to size. But on this side, I'm using some Elmer school glue. This is the time of the year to pick this school glue up. You'll start seeing it in the school supply section, and it will go on a really good sale. Pick this stuff up. I love using it for these projects, and I've never had a project where like the glue, like the project is lifted up, if that makes sense. I've never had the paper come off or anything. So you can see I had to piece two pieces together there, and I'm just using my brayer to get this really down good to make sure that it's not going to come up or anything. And then the same process, I'll cut off the excess, and then I will go around and file the edges to give it that nice, crisp, clean look. Since we did the barbecue skewers through the backing, it is very easy to find where those holes are, so I'll just pull those through so I can add a hanging tag. And I have this cute little mason jar from Dollar Tree. This is a fairly new item, I believe. So I'm just removing their little bow that was on it so I can embellish it myself. And I use one of these little 3-dimensional stickers that came from Dollar Tree. And now I'm just wrapping some twine around the top of it, and I just use some hot glue to make sure that sticks really well onto the back. I made this cute little finger bow out of twine and added some of the little Dollar Tree beads to the bottom of it. I thought that was super cute. Now just taking some tumbling tower blocks, I'm gluing these onto my sign, and I want this jar to fit at an angle on these. So I put some glue on the bottom of the jar so it can glue to the sign, and then I will have those tumbling tower blocks raise it up so I can change the florals in and out for different seasons, because I thought it would be kind of fun to make this so you could have it for different seasons of the year. So you can see how those florals just tuck right down into there. Now I just use some jute twine and feed it through those holes, and I tie some knots on the front. You could do like embellish this however you wanted. If you wanted like a beaded loop on there would be super cute, rope, anything like that. You wouldn't even have to put one on there. But there we have it. I think it turns out so cute. What do you guys think of this? And I love that I can switch those flowers out, and I really think that paper makes it look like galvanized metal on there. What do you guys think of this one? It's been a little while since I've made a riser, so I'm kind of excited to show this to you guys. If you're new here, I love to make risers. I make them all year long, and they're so fun to use in your decor. I have so many different ideas. I'll link some videos down in my description box if you want to see those. But I love that Dollar Tree has these little containers, and they have these little scalloped edge on the lid. I've made some of the bigger ones, but this is the first time I've seen these little mini containers. So I'm just taking a candle holder. You can use one that you have at home. You could use a wood one. You could use, Hobby Lobby also sells candle holders like this. They're like $1 more or something than Dollar Tree when you get them on a discount. But I'm just going to paint both of these the same color so they match. So I'm just using some white chalk paint, and you guys look at these adorable little hands down here. This is my little boy that came down as I was making this, and he wanted to help, and I thought, well, how can I say no to that? So his paintings, this just shows you don't have to be perfect with this, but I let him paint both sides of it. At first I thought, oh, I'll have him do the inside, and then I was like, well, he did a pretty good job. So I do end up letting him paint when I turn it over on the surface that will actually show. But of course, on the bottom, it's not going to show that much because you're going to glue it onto the candle holder. So I'm just showing you here, he flipped it over and started doing that. And I think he did such a great job. And I just love that his cute little hands are here forever in this cute little video making this riser. And he'll remember making this. So that is kind of fun.
You get to watch us do a little tag team here. So he's drawing the one piece while I'm painting the riser, and then we switch here in just a second. But it does take a few coats, maybe 3 coats of paint to get the coverage that you like, maybe even 4 depending on what kind of chalk paint you're using. So now I want this to really adhere. I don't want this to like fall apart or anything. I want it to be pretty sturdy. So I'm using some E6000 intermittently kind of around the edge of that candle holder. I'll even take a craft stick. I don't want this coming over the edge. I want it to look as clean as possible. So I'm kind of pushing it up and over onto the inside where that you won't see that portion because the container top is going to be glued to that. And then I'm just kind of spreading it out just a little bit, but I want to make sure I leave some of the area on the surface to put some hot glue because you're going to want that immediate hold. Now, you don't have to do the hot glue if you don't want to. You don't have to have that immediate hold if you're going to let it dry overnight. If you're impatient like I am, hot glue is your best friend. So I'm just going in the little areas I left open because you don't want to glue the glue. You don't want those 2 glues to mix because you will not get the type of hold that you're looking for. Now on a piece like this, it probably wouldn't matter so much because it's not like this is going to hang on a wall or anything, but just keep that in mind when you're doing that. I see a lot of people like put the hot glue right on top of the E6000 and that compromises the bond that you're going to get. So just be careful with that. So I'm going around cleaning it up because I don't want any of that glue showing. So I'm just doing my best to clean that up with that stick and my fingernail. Now, I love to distress things. You don't want to sand this because you're going to reveal the red that's underneath there. So I'm taking some mineral chalk paint, even like a cashew, an elephant color, some antiquing wax. I just kind of wanted to go really light on the distressing. But the reason I wanted to do it is because I feel like it really makes those scallops around that container lid really show up. You can see the detail in them. So it kind of gives them a little bit more definition. And if you look at pieces that you buy like in the store and things like that, a lot of them have a little bit of distressing or some type of definition on the edges of pieces like that. So I really feel that's what's going to elevate your piece to the next level. I went even over the little ridges in the candlestick there. You can even go over the top of it with some more white paint if you feel like you get it a little heavy and lighten it up a bit. But here's the finished project, and I think it is beautiful. This is going to be, I mean, of course you can use this all year round. It's not just Christmas, but these containers typically only come out at Christmas time, so that's why I'm putting it right here in this video. But I love this, and I intend to use this all over. And you get 2 lids, so you technically can make 2 projects. You just have to have another base for it. What do you guys think of this one? And are you fans of the risers? Because I have so many more new ideas to do with risers.
I am loving cutting boards right now, and they are all the rage. And I found this darling little decorative cutting board at Hobby Lobby when it was 50% off, so I paid $4 for it. I am not using this for food. It is strictly for decor purposes. And I have these cute little finials that I got on Amazon, and I will leave a link to those down in my description box, but we're going to use these as the feet. So I am staining them with just some antiquing wax, so that way they will match the cutting board. And depending on what cutting board you pick up or you're trying this with, you can paint your feet accordingly to kind of match or stain them both to kind of be the same. So I just took that little leather handle off. I decided that I didn't need that, and I'll just use a combination of wood glue and hot glue and use my ruler, and I'm just going to space out where I am putting these feet so I can get them kind of as symmetrical as I can. One of the most common questions I get is about my rulers that I use. Guys, I did pick these up about 3 or 4 years ago at TJ Maxx or Home Goods, and I have not seen them since. But if I ever find anything close to this, I will definitely let you guys know and leave a link to them. But I'm just using this to make sure that I get those feet pretty well like on the same line, and that way it's not going to lean or anything when I place down this cutting board. But look at how absolutely darling this ends up looking with my little decor on here. This is so cute, and I mean really it just adds so much of a good element to lift these items up off your original surface. What do you guys think of this one? I am so excited about this project. I know I say that about a lot of them, but you guys, seriously, this is one of my all-time favorite projects. So I'm making a lantern. So I just decided how tall I wanted my lantern to be. And I'm taking, we have like these long slats of wood here. So I am cutting it down into 18 inches. And I make 4 pieces in that 18-inch cut. Now, you wouldn't have to do yours this tall if you wanted to do it, 12 inches, 10 inches, 30 inches, however tall you want yours is how tall you're going to cut these pieces. So I just take my first piece, I cut it to 18 inches. I like to take my next piece, use it as a template of where to cut the next piece. You could easily measure out each piece, which is probably what my husband would tell me to do, is measure it rather than use a template, but whatever works for you. Again, that's why I love this farmhouse rustic style, is it's rustic. It doesn't have to be super exact. I mean, it needs to be exact enough for things to be able to put together, but I think you guys get what I'm saying here. So I just cut 4 of those pieces out at 18 inches long. So I just brushed off my wood. The barnwood has a texture to it that picks up a lot of like sawdust or different things. So I'm just cleaning it off before I really start working with each individual piece. And then I'm taking just a Clorox wipe container to trace a little bit of a circle. I'm wanting to do like an arch shape on this. And so I just trace that little like half circle there. You could trace the whole circle and then use a straight edge to do a line down. So I'll show you in a moment what that looks like, but you can really, if you even just wanted to cut a simple rectangle out, you could do that. I just like the arch look, but you can see how that arch is kind of on there and it goes all the way down to the end there, and then it squares off. So now we're going to use our jigsaw to cut this shape out. So I'm just going to clamp my wood so that way it's nice and secure so I can drill my pilot hole. The reason that you drill a pilot hole is you have to have something for your jigsaw blade to fit through. Now I'm just showing you how easy the jigsaw is. There's a little trigger on there and that's what makes it go. You can do it as fast or as slow as you want. I'm encouraging you to not let this intimidate you, because honestly, these projects are so simple. And once you do it, like your first project with your jigsaw, you're going to go, oh my gosh, okay, that was really easy and really fun. And your mind starts just reeling with all these different ideas of things to make. But I am just using this to cut out this shape, and I'll do this on all 4 pieces. And again, you can go as slow as you want. You can have it go as fast as you need it to, but it's not going to feel like you're out of control. And so you'll use that pilot hole, and you kind of have to curve your way around to get onto your line that you've traced, and then you'll just kind of go back over different ways for the lines. I hope that's making sense and you can see what I'm doing, but see how I use that pilot hole to guide my blade around so I could get that arch there? That's what I'm talking about there. So now I just clamp this so I can get to the other side of it. So I will just slide my blade into one of the cuts that I've already made and then just continue on. When you get to a corner, because you can't do like a 90-degree cut, you kind of have to back up a little bit. You'll stop your blade, back up a little bit, and kind of curve it around to get that next corner. So you can see how I back that up, and I'll curve it around to get on that next line, and then I'll come back and get from the other direction, and it will cut that corner out. I hope that makes sense to you. I just made a window in one of my videos, like a Gothic window. I will leave a link to that down in my description box so you can kind of see that too. I give a little bit more detail on using my jigsaw there. Now that I cut my first one out, I just use that as a template to draw a template on the rest of my 3 pieces for those cutouts. So I'm going to cut this out on all 4 pieces. So I just trace, and that barnwood is pretty dark, so I have to trace pretty hard so you can see it, but you can see that line there. I'll just do the same thing with the next 4 pieces, just cutting each of those out. So I just want to show you how easy it is to go around this curve here. You just want to switch places on your jigsaw so you have control of it with your correct hand and everything. And you can see you just kind of slowly go right around that. And that was sped up, guys. So I mean, I'm doing this fairly slow. Now, when you get your pieces cut out, you're going to look at those edges and go, this does not look very pretty. At this point, I was a little discouraged, but I thought I'm just going to keep going. And so pull your sander out and sand those edges. You're kind of going to round those edges out, sand both sides, every raw edge, and it's going to soften it, and it's going to make it look so much better. Kind of think like it's going to look like it's carved out of wood. So I did glue all the pieces together, and just in the same way that I'm gluing the base on here, but I just took each of those sides and glued them to the other side there, and then I just glued the base on. I just used wood glue. I didn't use any nails or anything like that. And now I'm just taking some antiquing wax, and I am just kind of using my finger. Again, this is just because I have that barnwood that has that finish, and when you cut the raw edge, it's very stark difference. And so I just took some antiquing wax and went over it, went over all of the edges, the very top of it where those edges are exposed, I do it there as well. So you could even, if you're just cutting this out of like a regular piece of MDF board, just paint it whatever color you wanted to. That would be super easy. Just use some spray paint, and that would be super quick as well. You guys,
Oh my gosh. I can't believe I made this. Like this has easily got to be like the top 3 of projects I've ever made. I absolutely love this. And you know what the hardest part is, you guys, is getting over that fear of using power tools. I promise you, once you do a jigsaw project your first time, your world is going to completely change. You're going to love it. It is so easy. I promise you. Please let me know what you think of this lantern down in the description box. I would love to know your thoughts on this.
I picked this basket up when I very first started my channel a few years ago, and it's been sitting waiting for the perfect project, and I felt like it was time to redo this. So I'm just wiping it off really good, and I'm also going to sand the edges because they were a little rough. And that way it's not going to be super rough. It'll be a little smooth. I just didn't want to get any slivers or anything, to be totally honest with you. This basket is beautiful, but the color is just not something that I have in my decor, that kind of almost like orangey look tone to it. So I thought I would totally paint this. Now, spray paint might have been a better way to go. I'm not 100% sure. I just kind of started painting it with my chalk paint, and I used this chip brush to do it, which a chip brush just has those natural bristles in it there. So you may get a bristle or two to come out, but it's very good for distressing and adding texture, which is definitely what I wanted. So I paint the entire thing white. It did take a couple of coats. It did take a little bit of time. And I'm just going to take some painter's tape here because I really wanted to add a stripe to it. You guys know I love to add stripes to things, and so I thought this basket would be the perfect thing to do that with. So I just taped off a little area. I was just kind of eyeballing what would probably look the best. And I'm taking my vintage duck egg from Dixie Belle. But of course, when you're doing your projects, you're going to be matching your decor. So definitely pick a color that would be, I mean, even just a plain gray, I think would be really pretty and really basic if you wanted to, or even like a cashew type color would be really pretty. So just a little color, but not a lot, something to add a little variation. But it's very easy on the basket here to kind of go over the areas with that tape there. The tape does a really good job as far as being a barrier. And I feel like where you have the weave of a basket, you've got a little bit of a buffer there in case you did go outside of the lines a little bit. But you can see it turns out pretty cute. And on the top, I couldn't come up with a good way to space my stripes, and so in the end this is kind of what I came up with, and it did end up looking really good. You'll see here, but I mean, it's not the most even of stripes, but I distress it so it looks okay. No, I do go in and distress it though, because I really did want to have that really aged look to this. That little bit of like, this piece came from being around a really long time, has lots of stories to tell. And so I'm just going over with my fingernail file to really get that rustic look to this. And I even go over the basket part here, and you can see where all the weave of the basket is. It really does pick up that sanding and adds that really good texture for that distressed look. And I take my time and go through all the pieces. And on the white pieces, I will even sand those down to reveal some of the original color. And then I just take a baby wipe and wipe the entire thing down because you get a lot of dust and everything. And I even did the handles. You can kind of see I distressed around the edges of the handles. This piece distressed up so nicely, but I think it turns out so beautiful. I feel like this has such a good French country vibe to me. I love it. It looks like it could just be maybe even like an old sewing basket that like your great grandma maybe had, or just some piece. I don't know. I think this turned out so beautiful, and I'm excited to use it in my home. And I will definitely use this one much more than I will the original color that it came.
This is a really fun, simple one. I picked this little orb up at the vintage market days that I went to a couple of months ago, and I wasn't too excited about the color of it. I bought it with the anticipation that I would be painting it, and I thought this was the perfect collaboration to do it in. So I'm just using my chalk spray paint there, and I just go all over. Since it is open and it is that sphere shape, you do want to go in, make sure you get all of the edges, kind of wait for it to dry, and then turn it and spin it and make sure that you cover up all of the colors. And then I do just take my emery board. You can take sandpaper, a finger sander, whatever you like. You could even, if you don't have a sand, like anything to sand it with, just use some chalk paint, like of a darker color in there to help age it. The sanding on this actually worked really well. You did not get a lot of that turquoise color coming through. It actually sanded all the way down to get like the original color of the metal orb. And so I really like how it turned out. I did take this plant from IKEA and took a couple sprigs off of that. I thought it would be fun to kind of see what it looked like to put a little bit of greenery on the inside, since I am trying to go for that really white and really green look. You would not have to do this, but I thought it kind of was fun, and I actually like how it ended up looking with everything together. This is just one of those perfect little items to have to kind of stick in a little pocket that needs a little something extra, or on a tiered tray. I really love how this turned out, and it was super simple and super quick.
I picked up this darling little bird cage and pedestal and apparently some glass beads at a recent yard sale that I went to. And I got a whole box of stuff for just a few dollars. And I was so excited about this bird cage because I loved the look of it and the structure of it, but I just the color was not doing it for me. And that's what's so fun about thrifting and yard sales is you get to find these structural pieces that you think, oh, if this was just a different color, I would love this, because things like that are so easy to change. Now I'm taking a wax candle and I am just putting it in the areas. You can see on this piece, there's some distressed areas already. That's how it naturally came from wherever this was originally purchased. And I don't want that green color to show, but I really wanted to have some of that brown distressed areas pop through. So I'm just very heavily taking this wax candle and rubbing it on there, because I wanted to make sure that that was the areas that when I distress this, or I'll show you what I do here in just a minute, that those are the areas that pop and that come out, not the green. So I took this out to my studio and spray painted it. You guys have seen me spray paint a million times, so I didn't feel like I needed to bore you with that footage. But what I'm doing now, and I did just use a matte spray paint, but any kind would work. I'm taking my heat tool. I had a viewer tell me to try this with this wax method, and I really did like it. It turns out really well. I just hold my heat gun until it heats that wax up underneath the paint and it starts to melt, and then you're able to wipe away the paint, and then it will thus show that little distressed base there, where the brown was, not the green, because I didn't put any of that wax where the green was, because I didn't want that popping through. There might be a little bit of green that comes through on one or two of these little areas, but you can't really tell. And you can always go in and touch it up with some paint if you really don't like it. But it was such a fun process to try. I've recently tried this wax method on another piece that I did recently in a video, and it worked so well. So I was very happy for this tip of using my heat tool to heat that up. And you can see I just hold it there to melt it. Just be careful not to burn yourself, obviously. And you can see I just hold it there and then it just wipes right off. I mean, it was so simple and easy, and I really did like the contrast. This birdcage ends up being so beautiful, and I can think of so many different ways that I can use this in decor in my home, so I'm quite excited about it. Now, I just did the same thing on this top part of the birdcage. Takes a little bit of time to do this, but it ends up being so pretty. And you can also, if you don't want to use the wax or use a heat tool, you still can just rub it off or sand it off, or even take like a putty knife and scrape it off. So if you don't want to have to use the heat tool, that's totally optional. It did just make this process a lot easier. But I think this birdcage turns out so beautiful, and it's one of those pieces that's kind of a staple piece to have, that is kind of timeless, and I think that it will be beautiful in my decor. Do you guys like this one?
Kirkland's has this adorable window, and it is quite large. However, at Dollar Tree, just currently, I found this last week at Dollar Tree, they have these little teeny windows back in stock. Now, I found this in the aisle where the frames are and like the little canvases and things, just so in case you're looking, you know where to look. So I thought it would be cute to create a little mini version of that window. So I'm just taking some Mod Podge and I am going around the whole area of this plastic, because I want to make sure that my paint sticks to the plastic and doesn't rub off. So I give a really good coat of Mod Podge all over the surface area of this window. window. Now, if you would like to do a bigger window and recreate a bigger window, I have made a couple of big windows out of plywood and my jigsaw, and I'll leave a link down in the description box so you know where to find those videos if you're interested in making one that is like true to size of the Kirkland's version. I thought it would just be really cute to use this little window to make a little mini version. I had never found these windows at Dollar Tree before, so I was ecstatic when I found this. So again, here I'm just putting some Mod Podge all over this, and then we're going to take it out to my spray paint studio and I'm going to spray paint it a white color to match the one at Kirkland's. In the wood section at Hobby Lobby, I found this darling little welcome sign or welcome cutout here. It is very little. It fits across the window perfectly. So I'm just taking a baby wipe and some antiquing wax. You can do this in whatever color you would like to contrast with your window. That is what's so fun about DIY is you get to personalize it to what you like. So you could paint your window any color. You can do this in any color. 4th of July colors would be super cute, but you can kind of see now that my window is painted there, how cute that welcome looks on there. So I'm just going to take it now and I'm going to use some hot glue to glue this onto the window. If you put your hot glue on the back of the letters like this rather than the window, it is easier to disguise the hot glue pieces, so that way you don't have any clumps of glue on that crossbar of the window in between the letters. So here's just a look at the Kirkland's inspiration piece that I have here, and then here is a look at the window that I created from the Dollar Tree product, the window, and then the welcome tag from Hobby Lobby. So cute. I think this would be perfect for the top of a tiered tray or anywhere in your decor. It's going to be so cute. I honestly think I may put this in my china hutch with some things. I think this turned out so cute, and it was just a couple of dollars. This project is so easy. I think anyone can do this. This just takes a little piece of wood that I have here. Mine is probably about 14 to 16 inches long, but you can make it any length or any width that you would like. Now, if you remember, we had a barn that we tore down, so I have a lot of salvaged barnwood that we have sitting in our garage. And so my projects all today use that, but you can use any type of salvaged wood or any type of wood that you would like. I just got this fabric at JoAnns. It just reminded me that it was very farmhouse with that little almost like ticking stripe through it. I really liked it. And so what I'm doing is I just cut it down to the size that I needed for my board. And I am just kind of tearing off the sides, like pulling those little threads out to kind of fray the edges, to kind of give it a little bit of, you know, a worn out look, I guess. And so just on the sides, I do that with all of the sides that I can. I don't really need to on the bottom because I'm going to be gluing some beads along the bottom. So I just hot glue this to my piece of wood. We're just making a little pocket here because we're going to stick some florals in there. So I used my little brayer and immediately realized probably not the smartest idea because it kind of made the fabric ruffle up. So just kind of lightly press it with your fingers. It will seep through the fabric a little bit, so just be careful. Use finger protectors if you're worried about that. But I just go around 3 edges, the 2 sides and the bottom, to make sure that it is adhered really good. This is why I frayed those edges, is because they're going to be showing there, and so I just wanted them to kind of look like it was an intentional, like, worn out look. Now I have these wooden half beads from Amazon, and they will be linked down in my description box. These are the smaller, like a really small size, so I'll try and link the size down there of these because I buy these and I buy the little bit bigger size, but these I want to say, I don't really even know, 8mm maybe. I'll check and I'll put that down in my description box. But I just put them in a little Ziploc baggie there, and then I just put a little bit of antiquing wax and I spray some water, and I'm just kind of gonna zhuzh these around, get them all kind of stained there. Doesn't have to be perfect or exact. Remember, we're doing a farmhouse look here. Everything's kind of supposed to look salvaged. So, and this step would be completely optional. I just thought it kind of dressed it up a little bit. After you dump those out, I just dump them on a baby wipe. I pat them down with a paper towel or another baby wipe to get all the excess wax off of them. And now I'm just taking my heat gun and I will just kind of dry them off a little bit. Now you can space these out in any length that you want. You could even just put one on each of the 4 corners would look cute. I kind of just went around all of the edges, kind of spacing them maybe like a 1/2 inch. I just kind of eyeballed it, and you can kind of see it's not exactly perfect, but that's okay. It doesn't need to be. So just know that. Now I have these florals that are from Dollar Tree. I just love this little, I'm not even sure what this is called. I should have looked at the tag, but I think it drooping over just really adds something to it. I love it. And then I have these 2 other little spring kind of purpley colored on the floral there, and I just thought those looked great. Now I thought the front looked a little bare, but this is completely optional. You would not have to do this. It's not bare enough that it's going to be like stark bare, but I decided to make a little sign to go on the top. So this is just a plank of wood from a pack that you get at Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to add some Charcuterie stenciling to it.
Now, you certainly don't have to do chalk couture on this. That is just what I chose because I am fairly new to it and I am loving everything about it so far. But if you had a cutting machine, you could easily use that. You could use stencils, you could use rub-on transfers, water slide decals, print on tissue paper. There are so many options now to do different types of designs on things that you're not just kind of like cemented into one idea or out of luck if you don't have one particular way of doing things. This particular transfer came from Chalk Couture's monthly club that you subscribe to, and they send you a transfer every month. If you want more information about that, check my description box down below or just message me. I'll be happy to answer any questions. But I just took the word farm and sweet and did farm sweet farm with that adorable windmill. I thought that looked so cute. Now I'm just sanding around all of the edges, and I sand the front of that design because I want it to look weathered and worn out. Then I just take a baby wipe, put it on my finger, and get a little bit of antiquing wax and just kind of run it over all of the edges and all of the corners. Where you sand it off, I sanded off that paint that I had painted this with. That wood is just going to allow that wax to seep into it and give it that really aged look. And then I just take some hot glue and I just glue this onto the front. Now, again, this step is completely optional, but I just really think it adds a lot to it. I think it turns out beautiful. I love how this looks. You can add a little thing on the back to hang this with if you wanted to even like staple some twine into it or something, or rope, or hang it that way, or just use it to prop up against like a backsplash in a kitchen or on a shelf somewhere. I love how this turned out. Please let me know what you think of this one down in the comments. Are you guys on Instagram? If you are, I would love if you would come and find me. I am Farm Charm Chic over there. I'll leave a link down in my description box so you can easily find me. But come and see what I'm working on. I post there quite a bit. I like to show you things that I'm working on or when I have videos ready. It's just another place to stay in touch. So if you do come find me, remember to send me a DM and say hi because I do love meeting new friends. I have this little oval sign left over from Christmas time, and I just used some spackling to cover in that little hole at the top, sand it down, and I'm just going to cover this completely in some white chalk paint. You can totally pick your own colors that match your own decor to do this. With this sign, I don't need this little end part here. It's a little bit taller than what I need, so I'm just using my saw to cut that off. To me, this oval shape looked kind of like an egg, so I thought it would be fun to make like a little farm fresh egg sign out of it. So I'm just going to use my cutting machine to cut out where it says farm fresh eggs here. And I got this from Cricut Design Space, but you could definitely freehand something. You can use the water slide decal paper, print on tissue paper. There's so many different options that you can do and use to get whatever type of lettering you want on your sign. And then I'm just showing you I have this cute little rooster that is a Christmas ornament left over. It's from Hobby Lobby. Guys, if you're ever looking for something for tiered trays or to have for some little different embellishments here and there, when the Christmas ornaments come out of Hobby Lobby, think of that as you're looking through them. I am just going to cover the back of the sign up, so I'm just cutting some craft paper down to size. I'll take some hot glue and run it all around the perimeter of the sign, and then I will just take my brayer. I do have a link for that down in my description box, and I just roll that hot glue while it's still warm, and it just kind of spreads it out a little bit, and it's going to make that paper stick. Then I just cut it as close as I can, and then I will take my little sander and I will just in a slow downward motion sand around all of the edges, and that backing will look like it was meant to go on the sign and made for it. So now I just take my cute little chicken and I just put hot glue all over the back side. I'm just going to turn it over and glue it to the top portion of the sign. I decided to kind of have it peeking up over the top there. That is completely personal preference there. And then I just used some tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree to put on either side and sandwich and make a little stand for it. And now I just take one of these little egg cartons. I can't remember if I got this one at Dollar Tree or Walmart. You get them either place and they come with a bunch of little fake eggs inside of it. And I'm just gluing that to the back of the sign. And then I'm just gluing a couple little tumbling tower blocks onto the bottom of it so it can stand upright. Just put my cute little eggs in there. And now I'm just going to kind of do some embellishing. I like to go over my vinyl with a little bit of white paint in my brush to kind of make it look not so shiny. And then I always go around the edge of my items with, not always, but most of the time, with a little bit of antiquing wax to give it a little bit of age and embellishing farmhouse look. Look how cute this looks. I'm so excited to put this in my china hutch with these cute little eggs there. I think this is so fun. I love it. I would love to know what you think of this one.
At the craft store, you can always find some cute little wood cutouts. These are some cute little birds that I happen to cut out myself, and I'm just going to show you the process of covering these up or painting them, painting them, because I feel like you can find a lot of different wood shapes in the different sections at the craft store. Now I have 2 sets of these. Each set of 3 I'm going to do a little bit different. They're going to look almost the same, but not quite. So I want you to pay attention and let me know which one you liked the best. So this first set here, I'm giving a very thorough coat of paint to. I give 2 or 3 actually to give a very good coverage. Now this second set here, I'm doing more of like a messy coat of paint. And so I'm just going kind of haphazardly all over the bird, not necessarily paying attention to getting every nook and cranny, just kind of like a pre-distressing, just giving it a very aged look from the get-go with the paint here. Now, and I do this with all 3 birds in each set. So you can kind of see them taking shape here and tell the difference between each set. Now I have this cute stencil here. I thought this would be a really fun stencil to use on these. Granted, you're going to see that it's much bigger than my birds, and so I can kind of turn it around and do different parts of the stencil on each bird. And I am using one of my new most favorite colors of paint that I've ever used, and it is the Vintage Duck Egg by Dixie Belle Paint. I absolutely love this color, and it turns out so beautiful on these birds. Now I just twisted each bird around on the stencil just to try and decide which part of the design I wanted on them. I wanted them to all look the same but yet different, not be completely cookie cutter. And I just am using a stencil brush with that duck egg on there and just going in an up and down motion. I'll even swirl it in some areas. You just want to make sure that your stencil is down really good before you start swirling it, because you don't want any bleed through. But I really do love using stencils, and I think they're so fun, and I like the different looks that you can get. I mean, you can see those different birds up there, how the pattern is different on each of them. And the coverage that this Dixie Belle paint gives is phenomenal. This is the first time I've ever used their paint, and I'm totally sold. I can't wait to try other colors. If you have any other colors to recommend, definitely let me know down in the comments. This by far is one of my most favorite colors of paint. I think it's just the perfect like grayish, bluish, greenish. I don't know how else to describe it other than that. So after I got my stencil and the paint on, I went ahead and sanded each of the edges. Now to me, this gave it a much more high-end look, something that was more custom. When you look at these items that you'll see in the different types of boutiques and stores, you'll see that they do have the edges finished like that, and I really just felt like it gave it a really crisp look. I also thought it would be fun to go over the actual stenciling there to give it a little bit more of a faded look, so you can see how that looks there. And then I did the same thing on all of the birds, and I even did the same thing on those birds I gave the messy coat to, but they just kind of had a lighter look. You can definitely tell the difference between the two here. Do you guys have a set that you prefer? I definitely think the messy coat set was faster to make. So if you were going to sell these, then definitely, if you like that one was definitely the easiest, but they both have a good place. I think they both turned out really pretty.
In my stash, I have several of these tags. I feel like a lot of times they come from Christmas time. I've noticed Dollar Tree starting to carry some blank ones for you to use. This one I think came from Dollar General, but I made a tag a couple of years ago on my channel with a beaded garland, and it has honestly been one of the most popular DIYs on my channel. So I thought I would kind of do a different take or an update on just a cute little tag to have for your decor, whether you use it into your trays, whether you just use it as an accent piece, but that's what I'm doing here. Now the paper didn't tear off the front of this as easily as some of the other ones I've had, so I'm just using a little bit of water, and I'm just kind of moving that around with my finger and my putty knife. This is just getting all of that glue and residue off, so I have a completely clean surface to work with. And then I'm just going to give this a basic coat of white paint. Now as I was doing this, I took some of this paper here and I started kind of distressing it with that to give some texture to it. I really like that, kind of like almost like a wet distressing here, and then my putty knife as well. I kind of use that to kind of rough it up because I like that look. If you're not a fan of that, then you'll just skip that step. Now in my stash, I have a lot of chalk couture things. There's some information down in my description box if you're curious about chalk couture, but it's just kind of like screen printing or stenciling. So I'm just taking, this is some script that I have here, and I love this. I thought this would be really cute. I love kind of that script in the background on some pieces. And so you first put it on your little fuzzy mat there, and it's going to help it so it doesn't tear your paint up when you rip it off. I'm sure we've all been there with like Cricut or something when you peel up that transfer paper and it tears half your paint up. So it just kind of stops that from happening. So once I decided the position I wanted this script to be, I wanted it kind of be a little bit at an angle. I thought that looked really cool. I'm just taking a light blue color here and I'm just scraping it on and then just kind of cleaning it up here with the chalk paste. And then you'll just peel that back to reveal your design. And I thought that looked so lovely. I really like how this turned out here. And then these also came in the same collection. You could do whatever you wanted. If you have don't have chalk couture pieces, the transfer stuff from Dollar Tree would work really, really good. I know at the craft stores in the scrapbook section, you can buy kits that have all of the different like 3D embellishments and things. I mean, just use your creativity. This is just to give you inspiration here. I really loved the postage stamp on here, and I loved that it said number 34 because I don't know how but Chalk Couture knew this, but 34 is like my lucky number. I don't know why, but that's just been a number that's kind of stuck with me. So I thought it was perfect to use on this. So, you know, if it has no significance to you, that's great. But it did to me when I saw it. I thought, okay, I'll try that. So I thought I would put a little ticking stripe on the bottom because it needed something a little extra. And when I did that, I felt like the top of it needed something too. So I'm just using some washi tape from Dollar Tree and using that as my barrier there so I could have these crisp lines. And I just did the top in the gray. Now I have these beaded garlands here and I'm trying to decide to do the darker or the lighter. Now I chose to do the darker, so it's a matter of personal preference. I buy these at Hobby Lobby. They usually have them at fall and Christmas time, and they're like meant for, you know, garlands or things like that, these beaded garlands here. And I buy them when they're 40% off. They end up being $6. It's the cheapest way to buy beads, plus they're already strung for you. So you can see I didn't have to string any of these. I just cut it off. I'll take the extra beads that I took off there so I could tie these off, and I will put those just in my bead jar, so I'll have some extra if I need them. And then I'm just taking the end that was already tied for me there. It's a loop, and I just stick that through the tag there and pull the beads right through, and that's what's going to fix this to my tag there. And then of course I thought it would be fun to do a tassel on the end. So I'm just taking a piece of wood and wrapping my twine around it. I do it about 20 times or so. Just depends on how thick you want your tassel. Also the piece of wood, the larger it is, the longer your tassel is going to be. So keep that in mind as well. And I just slide that off of the wood there, and then I'm just deciding where I want to make the neck. I've learned that there's the neck of the tassel, and the top part is called like the head of the tassel. And so I stick just a little stencil brush through there to create where that neck and the head of the tassel are. And then I just wrap the twine around so that way I can make sure I have a big enough loop in the head of the tassel there. And then you just cut the ends off there. And I'm just tying this onto the end of the beaded garland, and you just want to make sure to get the ends as even as possible. I'll straighten them out and trim them, and then I'll put them in a different position, straighten them out and trim them so you can get as flat of edge on the tassel-y pieces there. And then I like to put water on mine. My sprayer wasn't working, so I just dumped the water on here, which worked fine as well. And I just flatten it out, let it dry, and then you can fluff it up. But I think this turns out so cute. This is going to be perfect, a little accent piece. I love having these as a piece of texture in my decor, and hopefully you guys like this tag as much as you liked my other tag. I would love to know your thoughts on this down in the comments.
I absolutely love making fun little things with these trays from Dollar Tree. So I am just taking it, and I will list the spray paint that I use down in my description box, but it is a type of like outdoor paint that kind of gives it like a hammered metal look. Look down in my description box and I'll leave you the name and everything of what it is. And if I can find a link on Amazon, I'll leave that as well. But I'm taking these little paper placemats from Hobby Lobby. Guys, I always find these left over from like the season. I feel like they maybe don't sell as well. People don't know what to do with them or something, because I always find them and they're so cute. So I just traced the base of the tray on the my little placemat there. And now I'm just kind of pushing it into the edge here to kind of make another, I'm making a template is what I'm going to do. So I'll use this to cut another one out. So I'm just cutting around all of the edge to make sure that it fits in the center of that tray. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing and it's making sense to you. So I'll just kind of put that in. It fits great. So I'll put it on another one. This is my final piece here. I will trace this out because that first piece kind of got wrinkled and everything when I was playing around with it. And I will just cut this one out and we're just going to adhere this to the tray. Now I'm just using my purple school glue. This is just like a glue stick from Elmer's, and I'm just going to put this on the base of the platter here and then use the placemat to stick down on there. I've had a couple of questions asking how well this glue holds up. I have done projects with this that are like 2 or 3 years old or more, and I have not had any problem with the paper lifting up. I do recommend using a higher quality. I have used just like the Jot or JOT brand from Dollar Tree glue, and it has not held up as well on some projects. So I'm just saying, like, maybe use a higher end of glue stick if you're planning on reselling these or having longevity. I have not had a problem with this purple school glue, which is why I use it nonstop. But I'm just using my brayer here, and I'm just going to smooth out any wrinkles or anything. And then I am just going to take Mod Podge and first go around the edges of the paper to seal those down, and then I will Mod Podge the entire piece of paper. The Mod Podge is just going to help seal this, and I do end up going around the entire tray with it as well. This is not going to be food safe, so I just want to point that out. This is just for decorative purposes only. I have a china hutch that I like to put different dishes and things in, and this is always cute to have this platter size in there as a background. Now, I was using a type of Mod Podge that was called like hard coat or something. You can see here, it's just what I happen to have and grab. I probably would just do a normal shiny gloss next time on it, so just fair warning on that, but I think it still turned out really cute and it's going to look absolutely darling in my china hutch. This project is perfect if you have a couple pieces of some scrap wood hanging around. You guys, if you've watched me for any time, know that we had a barn we tore down, and so we have a bunch of extra barnwood. So I am just using that for this particular DIY, but you could even use a couple of Dollar Tree signs for the background as well. I just wanted there to be a decent size to this, so I am just sandwiching these two pieces together here. I just put some wood glue down the center, and then I am just going to use my clamps to help that dry. I am not going to do any additional nails or support or anything. I have found when I've done this, it holds up great because it's very little use that it's going to get. It's just going to be setting on a shelf. Now on the edges where I cut my wood down, I'm just going in with some antiquing wax to cover that up, so that way it is not like the fresh wood there, that it all looks like it's all weathered and aged. I am going to use this cute little tag in the project, so I am just untying the twine because I want to put that back on in the end. And I'm just wanting to make this look like enamel, so I'm covering it completely in white chalk paint. I'm not putting anything on the back because it's going to be glued onto the project. You won't see that. But I go around the edges with some black paint. And I like to use my foam brush to do that because I feel like I get a really good precision with that, if that makes sense, going around the edges, because I can just kind of rub that on the edge. And then I want this to look like the enamel is chipped in areas. So I will go in on different areas, and I'll show you here. I kind of will like squish my sponge on the side there and let that black paint kind of seep on, and then just kind of pull that into the direction I want, and that kind of makes it look like chipped enamel. Now, of course, this is just if you want to have a look like this is how you do it. You could easily just leave it all white if you wanted to. And then you could use a rub-on transfer, you could do some freehand, whatever you wanted to put on this tag is up to you. I chose to cut out the word hello. I thought this looked so cute on here and very welcoming. And so on the little tag hanger there, I go in with a little teeny tiny brush, you can see, and just kind of give that a little bit of the enamel look too. So now back to our wood background. Once that dries, I am taking this little piece of like coconut, I don't know, it's like what you put in the bottom of pots, and I cut it in half. So I'm just using half of it. And then I have these florals. The one came from Dollar Tree, the purple flowers. The other one I've had in my stash for literally like years. I don't even know where I got it from. But I'm taking this little plant liner and I am going to staple it onto my wood piece and to kind of look like it's like a little
planter pot there. You can kind of see the look I'm going for here. And then I even have to, after I staple it, I want it to be very flat against the wood. So I will go with some hot glue on the edges and glue that down completely. And then I'll just kind of press that down until it dries there. And then I have this bucket of paint, and that's what I end up using to make sure it dries securely. This is such a fun project because you can customize it with the different florals that you wanted to use. I just love this little grass that I have. And again, I wish I knew where I picked this up. I want to say I think I might have got it at the at-home store. I've literally had it for like maybe 10 or more years. It's been forever. And so I'm just layering that in there. And then the purple flowers I thought would look so cute to have kind of hanging out. And I set it up so I can kind of position them where I want them because I just thought that would look so cute. And I go in with my staple gun and I staple it all down against the wood so that way it's nice and secure in there. So that's how I get it to stay. And then I put a lot of hot glue. You can see I'm just putting tons and tons on the inside there. And because I want that plant liner, the little pot liner, to be nice and flat. And so I put my paint on there to make sure that dries completely flat there. And then I will just kind of come in here and fix everything once it's dry to make sure everything's positioned how I want it to look. So hopefully this is making sense to you. Now I want to put this cute little tag on the front because it does kind of break up that little pot liner there. And so I just put the little tie back on, and then I'm going to staple this on as well. You'll see how I do that. So I just tie this off completely before I staple it down, and I'm just going to position it and then kind of flip it up. You can kind of watch how I do this here. And then I just kind of, and I'm sorry that I get a lot of my arm in the shot there, just kind of staple that down and flip it back over. And then I just put a lot of hot glue on the back of it and just hold that down so it's just glued completely into place. And then I go in and this little coconut husk stuff that this is made out of, I just kind of fluff it up to kind of give it a little bit of texture. I just absolutely love how this turns out. I think this is so cute. I love the floral choice that I made, but that's definitely something that you could change to your liking. I want to know what you guys think of this if you like it. I just think that this is so beautiful and I can't wait to use this. This is one of my most favorite projects from Dollar Tree ever. I love how this turns out. I'm sure you have seen these little plastic storage containers for like cookies and treats. Dollar Tree seems to have them for every season or holiday. There are so many different uses for them, so if you find them, pick up a couple so you can do some projects too. But I am just using some of the rope from Dollar Tree as well as some of the Nautical rope. Now, the Nautical rope that I had did come from Hobby Lobby, but I do have a bunch and I have seen it lots of times at Dollar Tree, so you can easily just use that as well. I just happen to have like a great big spool of it, so I'm just working through that. So you can see I left a little gap on that bottom row so I could kind of feed up some more. So I had just like a little piece that I was putting on the bottom row. And so that's how I'm getting the next row to come and look very cohesive. And of course you may have a couple of seams. You're going to try to get all your seams lined up as close as you can on one space. So that way you can kind of turn that to the back when you're displaying it. So I'm going to do about 3 rows of the rope, and then I'll go in and do 2 rows with the Nautical rope. And this project is really so easy. If you can use a hot glue gun and like turn something around in a circle, like you can totally do this. So you just do a little bit of hot glue, place your rope, let it dry a little bit so you can move on to the next area and just work in little areas, being careful not to do like your bead of hot glue. You don't want a whole bunch coming out, just a little bead, place your rope, let it dry, and just keep spinning until you get the desired amount of rows for the pattern that you're going for. When you're starting a new portion with the rope, you're just going to put a little bit of hot glue around that and let that dry. That's going to stop any fraying from happening. So you'll just have to do that when you start each new row or a new piece of rope. Now you'll be able to see where my seams are all kind of lining up at the back. So that's what you're going to try to do, is have one cohesive area like that. So that way, you know, you can kind of tuck that away and hide it. Now, when you get to the top, I'm just going to make sure that I go up above the plastic container so it kind of finishes it off with a little bit of a nicer look. Now, I also have one of these little oval shaped tins that I did from Dollar Tree, and look at how cute they look. I just got a couple of like IKEA plants to put in them. You could do whatever floral arrangements you wanted to. You could use them for so many different things, but I love how these turned out. I feel like they are truly so high end and nobody would know that it was Dollar Tree.
I have these cute little seed pots. They're kind of what you use like when you're starting seeds in your house before you take them outside to plant. So perfect for springtime if you see these anywhere, like where you find your seeds or anything like that at your seed stores or wherever, greenhouses, picks them up because they're kind of fun to do some crafts with. So they have this beautiful texture to them. And so I'm, like a real natural feel. So I'm just taking a chip brush with some white paint and I go over each of them to kind of bring out that texture so you can really see it there. And then I'm just going to take some styrofoam and I'm just going to use my putty knife here to cut that. I find that is the easiest to cut it. And I'm just cutting 3 little areas there to stick down in each of the pots. I do kind of roll it on my table to give it a little rounded shape you can see in there so it fits in really nice. Now I'm going to take some cardboard. This is just off of, an Amazon box here. And I'm just going to trace each of these, well, just 3, not each of them, but I'm tracing 3 so that way I can cut 3 circles out. And I will use a screwdriver to kind of poke a hole in the middle of each of these. And what I'm doing here is I want a flat surface to be flush with the top of the pot. So, and you'll see why here because we're going to put some stuff on it. And so I just the nice thing with these pots is since it's kind of that natural material, like you can kind of manipulate it to fit those in. Now I'm just taking some white flowers that I have. This is something that was in my stash and I want to say I either got it at Hobby Lobby or Walmart, but I mean definitely Dollar Tree has such beautiful florals. If you are anything like a crafter like myself, you probably have a good stash of florals already that you can pull from, but anything's going to look really cute doing this. And you can even change it up for different seasons if you wanted to. It would be really easy to pull out those flowers and stick something else in to change them. So now what I'm doing with that cardboard space is I'm just using some hot glue and some reindeer moss. And I just picked this reindeer moss up at Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to put a little bit of glue and then push down that reindeer moss all the way around each of these where that cardboard area that we cut out is. And I use a barbecue skewer to help me so that way I don't burn my fingers and I can also get it pushed down in any like nooks and crannies, if you will, that it needs to be done. So you can kind of see here, I'll place down that little bit of reindeer moss and then just push it down with that barbecue skewer. I love how these turn out. I love the natural feel and the natural vibe that they're giving here. They're going to be beautiful in my home and definitely bring that touch of spring. Is this something that you guys would try or do you like this? Let me know down in the comments. I picked this sign up at a garage sale last summer and I absolutely love the little faux shiplap slats that are in there. Now this sign is cute the way that it is, but those colors do not match my house. They're kind of a little dark and drab for the fall colors that I do. So I'm excited to brighten this up and make it everyday. So I take it out to my garage and I just sand it down really good with my electric sander so those letters aren't going to be peeking through the paint. And then I'm just using my little fingernail file here to do a little touch-up sanding if there were any areas that I needed to focus on, or once I got it under better light, I could kind of see some areas I needed to sand a little better. Then I just take a baby wipe and make sure that all of that grit and everything from sanding, all the dust is totally off of it before I start painting it. I really like the black color that is on this frame, and it makes it so simple to leave it that color, and it really works with the project that I'm doing. So I just tape it off so I won't get any paint splatter or anything on that. And then I just take some chalk paint, and this is where you can customize it to your own decor. I really like the white shiplap look, and so I'm just painting white chalk paint over these slats here. I do one good coat, let it dry, and then go back over and do a second. You can do however many coats it would take to cover your project. Just know that when you're using white paint, you can kind of see my first coat there is not super doesn't have a lot of coverage, so I'm just using my heat tool there to kind of dry that quickly so I can kind of move through this. The second coat has a lot better coverage since it is that farmhouse style and it is rustic. We want it to look a little bit aged. It's okay if you can see a little of that original base coming through. Now I'm just going to remove the frame to reveal that black portion of the frame, and I will go through and sand all of the edges and the corners to make it look even more distressed. It was already beat up kind of a little bit, so I decided just to embrace that since it is farmhouse, and we're just going to sand it a little bit more and make it a little bit more aged. Now can you see those slats where the shiplap is? You can see the paint pooling there. I really liked how that looked. It just kind of gave it more of that aged look. Now I got this frame at Hobby Lobby. It was on their clearance, so it was about $5 it looks like there, and I loved how this looked. It was the perfect
perfect size for this. You could do whatever shape of wreath you have, whatever color, make it for Christmas time, fall time. You can change this out however you would like to do that. I have this thick burlap ribbon, and so I am just going to make this hang from the burlap ribbon. So I just cut a length of that, and then I am just lining the edges of that ribbon up. Now I really wanted this to be sturdy hanging from this. I didn't want it to go over the top of the frame to the back. I kind of wanted to put it underneath, if that makes sense. So I just kind of pry that shiplap a little bit until it opens up there. And then I'm just going to feed that burlap ribbon through over to the back edge. Once I have that through and I have my slat pressed back in place, I am just going to cut that ribbon off. You know, it only needs to be over just a little bit. You don't need a lot hanging there. And then I'm just going to use some hot glue to kind of give that a little bit of extra security. I glue the base portion and then the middle, and I just press that down until it's dry. Now it does have these little sawtooth hangers. I do take one of those off. I use a hammer to place it on the back there so I can hang it the correct direction. However you would like to hang it is up to you, or you can even just lay it, like stand it up against something. So now I just had to decide if I wanted the wreath to go in front of the burlap ribbon or behind. I chose to leave it behind. That's a matter of personal preference. I am so pleased with how this came out. I absolutely love this. It is perfect for everyday farmhouse. I can even change the wreath out for different seasons. Next time you're at your thrift store or a garage sale, look for these staple pieces like this that maybe you don't love the design and you saw how easy it was to change and make it super neutral. I just love the look of this little pot on Kirkland's website and thought I could try and replicate it. It doesn't look exactly like this one, but I think it turns out pretty good, the same feel. I just got this pot at Dollar Tree, and the one at Kirkland's kind of looked a little bit roughed up, so I'm just taking some white chalk paint with a chip brush, and I'm just doing a very light dry brushing all over this, and I go over the entire pot a couple of times, and I'll do a layer, wait for it to dry, and I'll even do like an up and down motion with the brush as well, like tapping it onto the pot to give a little bit more detail to it. These pots are great from Dollar Tree, and they're actually pretty sturdy. They're all just plastic, as I'm sure that you can tell or that you've guessed, but I really liked the shape of this one because it had kind of that rounder, bulbous like shape to the bottom of it, and I thought it was really kind of gave that same feel that the Kirkland pot gives as well. So here I'm just showing that tapping motion I was talking about earlier. I have such a small amount of paint. It's just what's left on my paint after doing all of the dry brushing, and this just gives a little bit of a different texture to it, helps break up all of the distressing and everything, just something extra. So I'm putting a few Jenga blocks or something in the bottom, and I'm just showing you this is a plant from IKEA, and it fits perfectly in there if you have something little to kind of prop it up. So that's a great alternative to put in there. I also had this little topiary ball that I got at Hobby Lobby. It was from their spring line, and so it was 50% off when I bought it, so it was $4. And so I'm just showing you that that works absolutely perfect there. And it was very light with those Jenga blocks in there and that topiary ball. So I just grabbed some rocks I had. You can get those from your yard, or Dollar Tree sells them, any craft store. Stuck those in the bottom, and then I just tucked this little topiary ball down in there. Here's a look at the Kirkland's inspiration, and then here's a look at how mine turned out. It is not exactly the same, I do know that, but it gives the same feel and the same vibe, and I think for a fraction of the cost, it turned out lovely. It's going to be the perfect touch to anywhere in my decor that needs just a little bit of greenery. This is another project that I absolutely love. It's one of my most favorites of all the projects that I have done from Dollar Tree. So I'm just taking some garden fencing, and I am going to cut off the little stakes at the bottom, and then also these little latches that come on the side that you would use to hook like another piece into it. And so that way we've got a little bit more of a flat surface area to work with on the edges. Now I am just taking some zip ties, and I'm going to zip tie this together so that way it makes kind of a cylinder shape here. I'm going to make a bird cage using this. So I just want to make sure that this is really tight together. These little zip ties are from Dollar Tree. They're just found in the automotive section, and you get a pack. There's like black ones and red ones. So
they're super nice to have on hand and everything. So I am now taking some embroidery hoops, and I am going to, the size that I needed was the outer ring of the embroidery hoop. So I'm just taking the metal pieces off. Now, if you wanted to keep this completely to Dollar Tree, you would just use some like Easter basket handles, or like the pail, sand pail handles or something like that would probably work really well also. So I'm just going to hot glue these in kind of in a crisscross pattern to make the top rounded dome to the birdcage. This part did take a little bit of time because I wanted to make sure that it was all like put together really well. So there was a lot of gluing and then clamping and letting the glue dry, moving on to the next area. And then even with at the very top, I wanted to make sure that there was not like a big space or anything between all the embroidery hoops where they met. So I was gluing each layer there on as well and clamping that. So just beware that it took a little bit of time to do this, but it looks really nice in the end. Now, I did get these little finials. This would be completely optional, but I found these at Hobby Lobby in a pack of like 3 or 4, and I'm just going to cut that little end piece off and then glue this on the top. Now I take this out to spray paint it. You could paint this any color that you wanted. I can think of so many different fun colors it would be to paint this, but I chose to do mine white because I wanted to put a plant in it and have that greenery pop against the white, but so fun to do so many other colors. So I just make sure I give a really good, takes a couple of coats to get the inner part of that garden fencing covered. And then I take it inside and after it's all dry, and I'm going to use my emery board, and I'm going to just kind of rough this up so that black from the garden fencing peeks through, so it looks like it's been wrought iron that was painted that is now kind of wearing off, I guess. Now, since the top, the embroidery hoop, does not have that black color underneath, if I was to sand it, obviously it would just be the natural bamboo color that comes through. And so I am just using some elephant chalk paint. You could use mineral, whatever color chalk paint or paint you wanted to use that kind of had that darker tone to it to kind of make it look like it matches the garden fencing. But look at how cute this looks when it's all done. I think this turns out so cute. I love putting plants underneath this. This is one of my most favorites.
This item has been sitting in my thrift flip stash for some time now, and I thought this would be such a fun project. I wanted to make this little fleur-de-lis stand here look kind of like aged metal or old kind of metal. Hopefully I achieved that. You can kind of see it's been painted before. There are some drip marks on there. So I do clean this up really good, wipe it down really well. I also go in with some sandpaper. I sand anywhere that there are paint drips on it. Now I can tell that it does kind of have a little bit of a crackling look to it where it's kind of been aged already. And so I kind of thought that that would work to my advantage. I do decide to put some Mod Podge on here to give this some texture because where I saw so many drip marks from the paint before, I wanted to make sure that I had a good surface for my spray paint to adhere to. The trick to avoiding that when you're working on slick pieces like this, if you can sand them, that helps. And then also very light coats of spray paint. I just love using this hammered metal spray paint. This is Rust-Oleum. I've also used Krylon's brand before. It gives that texture that you saw on the lid there to your pieces, so it does look like that hammered metal. Just work in really light coats here so you can kind of see how I started there, and I just worked my way around the entire piece. I let it dry thoroughly in between coats, and it has this reaction that happens that gives it kind of that bubbled texture, that hammered metal look. Now I took it down into my studio after it dried because it was still a little bit shinier than I wanted. I did kind of want a little bit more of an aged look to it. So I'm just taking some antiquing wax. This is just a water-based antiquing wax. This is the kind you can get at your craft store or Walmart. And I'm going all over the entire piece, making sure to push it in all of those little nooks and crannies that this piece has so it would have that totally like aged old world look. I did wipe some of it off in areas that it was a little heavy on there, and then if there were any areas I wanted to go and darken back up, I just put a little bit more. But I am very happy with how this piece turns out. I think sitting like on my porch or in my home or anywhere, this is going to give a perfect old world French country look. I love this. This type of piece, if you were to buy this metal, would cost so much money, and it was perfect for a thrift flip. What do you guys think of this piece?
I would like to thank you so much for joining me for today's compilation video. I hope that you enjoyed all of these DIYs. If you had a favorite, let me know down in the comments. I always love to hear which ones you guys like the best. Thank you so much for watching today. I'll see you next time. Happy crafting! If you like the video that you just saw and you want to keep crafting together, here's another video that you might enjoy. And as always, remember to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.